can't help but smile like a little bitch.
Yeah, that's really bad. That's really, really bad. To me.
Ding dong. Nick, Nicodemus, you are here first, and so's the angel. This is Gabriel. Gabriel has an eating disorder, a little thin, but Gabriel's here. 10,000 Pine points for Nick Nicodemus for being the top of his class. He likes sunsets, long walks on beaches. Great guy. Moon Shoes, 5,000 Pine points to you. Tell you, he's every time we at the home office in Wichita we think about Moon Shoes, we just his wit, his generosity. I mean, the best people show up here right away, and Moon Shoes is no exception. Caustic hymn. I mean, can this guy sing? The hymns that he sings. I mean, he's an atheist, but when he sings How Great Thou Art, it makes young Christian women weep. And older Christian women. Jasoni, on the other hand, is a loser. He's never had friends. When people see him on the streets, they kind of, Jasoni, and then they walk on the other side. But welcome if you're new here. I am an expert in Christianity, and I have been given permission from this guy here on the, I think it's your right, to, if you are a doubting Christian, you have the permission of this gentleman to talk to atheist experts. And I'm an atheist expert on Christianity. And I had fun yesterday on Sean McDowell's show. I play a little game with Christians. It's called Try to Get Them to Say the Word Hell. And so many times they don't want to say it. Here's a prime example.
Intellectually, but it's hard emotionally, isn't it? When someone's going through that,
it's quiet.
That's the difficulty to separate. All right, here's a question from PineCreek. PineCreek, thanks for watching. He asked an interesting question. It's directed to me. I'll let you jump in. I'll give my 2 cents. He says, if someone has sincere doubts on high stakes issues in Christianity, why is it so bad to just leave Christianity?
Yeah, okay. Little context. There's Jonathan McLatchie, who I've talked to before a long time ago. We haven't talked for a long time. But he said there's low-stake issues in Christianity and there's high-stake issues in Christianity. The low-stake ones would be like, how old's the universe? How old's planet Earth? Doesn't matter. You can be a Christian and be old Earth, young Earth. But a high-stake issue is, who is God? What's the character of God? Is he the author of evil? Is the New Testament reliable? Those sorts of things are high-stake issues. And I'm asking a very simple question. 2 people can look at the evidence for Christianity. They can be just as knowledgeable as each other. One accept it, one reject it. What's so bad about rejecting it? I'm trying to get Jonathan to say the word hell. And he can't. Well, you'll see for yourself.
What do you think, Dr. McLatchie?
Well, it depends what the doubts are, and whether it's a question of whether the reasons for leaving Christianity are in fact rational, or whether they're based on correct information or not. So if I was sincerely persuaded that the evidence disconfirmed Christianity, then sure, I would deconvert.
Yeah, and if one is sincerely convinced that Christianity is false, you would. What's so bad about them leaving? Just because you disagree with them. My question is, what's so bad about someone looking at the evidence and disagreeing with you? what's so bad about someone who knows the evidence better than you do, Jonathan? Oh, that's impossible. Nobody knows the evidence better than Jonathan. But let's say someone did, and they choose to disbelieve it. They just don't find it convincing. Why? What? Who cares? Can't say it. You can't say because there's eternal consequences like hell.
If I thought that theism was disconfirmed by the evidence, I would become an atheist. There's nothing epistemically non-virtuous about deconverting if, in fact, the evidence justifies that. I would just contest whether the evidence actually justifies that. In fact, I think that the evidence justifies a Christian belief, and that's why I do this ministry, is to try and convince people that actually...
But why? Why are you trying to convince people that this is true? I know you believe it's true, but what about its truthfulness makes you want to desire to convince people of it? That's the question. And Jonathan, you're smart enough to know this is what I was getting at. I asked this question in the live stream earlier too, like, what's so bad about leaving Christianity? Well, have the guts to say it's about heaven and hell. I do appreciate apologists who do say that, but I get a sour taste in my mouth from Christians who are just so reluctant to go there.
The evidence justifies Christianity rather than its falsehood.
Okay, but to get to the let's see, the title of this video, I got 2 questions in here.
Good. All right, fair enough. All right, PineCreek, it's your lucky day, buddy. 2 questions from you. They're good questions. We'll wrap
me and Sean McDowell are buddies. Well, it makes sense that we're both buddies. Like, he has a PhD in theology or whatever, and I'm an expert in Christianity as well. So, you know, we buddies, we experts have to stick together and be buddy-buddy.
Wrap up with this one. Jonathan, what do you think? He says, would Jonathan be okay with doubting Christians talking to atheists about their doubts?
I encourage Christians to talk to both sides. So my ministry, talkaboutdoubts.com, is a Christian ministry. So if you reach out to us, you're talking to a Christian. There are also atheist organizations that do the same thing. The Recovering from Religion Foundation is...
Whoa. There's also atheist organizations who are trying to convince people out of... Recovering from religion is when you're already out, right? Like, if you're a recovering alcoholic, you're not drinking alcohol at the time. You're already out. You're recovering. It's like from the baggage of Christianity. No. What Jonathan meant to say, I'm sure of it. I'm sure, because Jonathan's a smart guy. What he meant to say was, for every hour someone comes to spend with me, and I help them with their doubts about Christianity, they ought to spend an hour with an expert on thinking that Christianity is false. 1 for 1, because we're all about fair and balanced, right? We are Fox News here, me and Jonathan. Fair and balanced. 1 hour with Jonathan, 1 hour with me. What do you say, Jonathan? I just have to get a hat. I agree with you. Let's talk about doubts. Maybe I should start a website called talkaboutdoubts.org. And it almost looks like he has like a street epistemology symbol. He does, doesn't he? Oh my goodness. Did you know that, Jonathan? The street epistemologists use the same symbol up here?
An atheist equivalent organization is doing some very similar work on the other side to what we're doing at talkaboutdoubts.com. So yeah, I encourage people absolutely to read and listen to and engage with scholars and experts and thoughtful people on both sides of the issue.
Yeah, and I'm an expert. Like, Jonathan has some people don't think Jonathan's an expert because I think he just has a degree in a hard science. Wait a minute, I have a degree in a hard science. I have 3 degrees in hard sciences. So, but you know, we're still experts. Jonathan and I are both experts on Christianity. So yeah, feel free to talk to him. And then if you talk to him for an hour, feel free to talk to me for an hour, and you'll get fair and balanced perspectives. I think that's very fair. So in that vein, I'm going to open up the room to Christians who are doubting. And I know there's pastors and preachers who might watch this and you're doubting secretly in the privacy of your own home. Feel free to come in as well. I know there's apologists who doubt, who have questions in their mind. Braxton Hunter, you come to mind. Feel free to come in and share your doubts, and I will help you work through them. Why is PineCreek being so condescending? You can't feel condescended against if you choose not to be condescended against. It's more about the receiver, not the person giving it, right? Okay, room is open. I'm sure Jonathan would never feel condescended against him if I was to say something to him. He just doesn't take it that way. Choose not to take it that way. Do you doubt your doubts? Well, that's an original statement. I've never, ever, ever in my lifetime heard that one before. Now, that was condescending, but it was also kind of funny. I don't have any PhDs. I only have master's degrees. While we're waiting for Christians to feel the Holy Spirit prompting them to come on, sometimes the Holy Spirit is a little late on the ball. Let's listen to this one. Is the Bible a pro-life book?
You say the Bible is a pro-life book?
Of course. Of course.
Then what do you say to the people out there who say, well, you know what? God killed everybody on Earth. He killed everybody except for Noah and a bunch of farm animals. That's not very pro-life.
Farm animals?
No, it doesn't sound like it.
Because I've had people make the argument, there's probably some pregnant women that were there and the flood happened that God sent, and he kind of aborted those babies.
Well, on the same hand, he also did have an ark and did try to save as many as he could. And it was,
but a boat is really small. You couldn't fit all.
God's going to cause the earth to flood. But look on the bright side. He did try to save as many as he could. You know how you save as many as you could, Ken? You don't cause a flood.
If a fetus is, considered a baby, shouldn't he have saved every pregnant woman because there's life on them?
So we do try to save every baby. Yes. Yeah.
I'm talking about the ark.
Except for God during the days of Noah. And then you don't save the babies. You let them drown. But I guess he's talking on behalf of the Catholic people, humans.
Ark itself.
Which means that Catholic humans are better than Yahweh because they at least try to save drowning babies, and Yahweh actually drowns drowning babies.
He should have put all the pregnant women on the ark.
So the interpretation of the Genesis story is hard.
That's a great place to cut it off. The interpretation of the Genesis. No, it is not hard at all. It's extremely easy. It's a story. It's a fictional story. Done. Okay, let's see what Tim Barnett has to say.
That was painful to watch. And that's partly because I don't think the priest did a good job, and partly because I think the question was a setup job. Either way, I think this video can serve as a learning experience. Would you say the Bible is a pro-life book? Well, that depends entirely on what is meant by a pro-life book. Sometimes we need more information before we can answer a question. In this case, it's not immediately clear to me what is meant by a pro-life book. And so we need to ask a clarifying question. What do you mean by a pro-life book? Most people associate pro-life with the abortion debate.
Yep.
The phrase pro-life is shorthand for the belief that elective abortion is wrong. So someone could take a pro-life book to mean a book against elective abortion. And that's probably what the priest took the question to mean.
Yep.
But that's not what the questioner meant.
I think the questioner did mean that because he immediately started talking about pregnant women being drowned.
Instead, he's asking something like, do you think the Bible is against all killing? Well, that's a different question.
Well, that's implied in the question, but he's relating it to the abortion issue because the questioner's trying to do is he's trying to get Christians to cry. He's trying to get Christians to feel icky. He's trying to get Christians to feel like, I'm so against the killing of the unborn, but yet God did it. I worship Jesus on a Sunday morning. I raise my hands in the air. And at the same time, I have to imagine Jesus taking the heads of toddlers and pushing it underwater. That's what the questioner's trying to do, and it's brilliant. He's trying to make you feel bad. There's nothing wrong with people trying to make you feel bad.
With a different answer. After all, the Bible is full of examples of God killing people through acts of judgment. The flood is a prime example. So notice we have two different questions with two different answers. Is the Bible pro-life? Well, that depends. God gives commands against murder, unjustified killing, and I think this includes taking the life of an unborn human. But God is also justified in taking life, especially in judgment. Unlike humans, God can legitimately take life that he gives.
Yeah. And when you're talking to a Christian about this issue, grant that, yeah, God can take anything. But drowning, really? Filling the lungs with water for toddlers and even babies who are treading water for a while, and then it gets in their lungs and they cough it, but they're not dead yet. Really? Come on, Tim. Tim, are you there? Are you listening? Is this the God of the New Testament who sets children on his knee and says, let his children like these that will inherit the kingdom of heaven, let the children come to me? In the Old Testament, he takes their head and he puts it underwater. In the New Testament, he puts them on their knee and bounces them. Which God do you serve, Tim? Do you serve a Jekyll and Hyde God? Is your God like a box of chocolates? You're never going to know what you're going to get? I just watched Forrest Gump with my son the other day. But yeah, God is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. One century, he's drowning babies. The next century, he's loving on them.
In other words, God has prerogatives regarding humans as their creator that humans just don't have. Unfortunately, this poor Christian failed to make some important clarification.
If only this Catholic was as good as me, let's temper that, and made these distinctions. Like if I was there with this arrogant, condescending atheist, he's probably an atheist, I would have like, but this poor Catholic man, I mean, he just doesn't watch Red Pen Logic enough. All you Catholic fathers out there, gotta watch this guy. Watch Red Pen Logic. He will show you how it's done. And then after watching an hour of him, you should watch an hour of me, because fair and balanced, right? Room is open. I'm awaiting. You know, when I was watching this on Sean McDowell's channel, it boggled my mind the type of people who watch his show. Like there was a huge side conversation about young earth creationism. Sean, these are the types of Christians you're attracting? I'll be very honest, you're attracting the bottom of the barrel type Christian. If they're talking about Adam and Eve being literal people in the garden. Not even William Lane Craig believes that. But I guess maybe some Christians say the same thing about me, right? I attract the bottom of the barrel atheists. I think there's at least 3 of them here. They're top of their class. You know who they are, because I announced them earlier. Yeah. You atheists listening right now, you're a bunch of dum-dums. That's who you are. So Christians, you have nothing to fear by coming in and talking to me. Jonathan McLatchie has given his permission to talk to experts on the other side. I am an expert. I've forgotten a lot of the Christianese lingo. I'm a little weak on the post and pre-trib stuff. But I was a Christian for 30 years, better Christian than most of you flag-waving phony Christians. I mean, I love Jesus because I obeyed his commands. Most of you Christians, you go out partying on Friday nights, Saturday nights, then you go to church on Sunday mornings and you think you can just live your life that way. No, I never did that. I prayed without ceasing. I walked. I talked. I walk the walk. I talk the talk. So, yes, I am an expert because I knew the real Jesus. He's dead. How did I end up being a Mennonite once? You don't understand. Being Mennonite is like being a Jew. It's like asking a Jew, how did you end up being a Jew once? Come on, Joshua, you're smarter than that. There, that was condescending. Well, at least young Earth creationists are honest about their book, while weak Christians are both dishonest towards the book and reality. Like, well, J.I. Person, you make a good point. I do think old Earth creationism and figurative Adam and Eve, or accepting evolution via common descent, does put extreme pressure on a lot of theologies. But as Jonathan McLatchie said in this live stream, it's better just to switch your theology than leave Christianity altogether. Why? I don't know. He didn't say. Well, he said because it's true, but who cares if it's true? What about its truthfulness makes it important and urgent? HE double hockey sticks. You should invite McDowell Jr. to your show. I think I have. He's chilling up. But how much you want to bet he would never come on my show? Even though we're buddies. Sean, we're buddies. You're invited on my show officially right now. If anybody has his ear, like more of his ear than I do, let him know. If you're listening right now, Sean McDowell, someone tag him on Twitter. It's funny, like I bet you a lot of these guys have a spare half hour here and there, and they could come on my show, but they don't. I do think we'd have a very cordial conversation. Have you talked to Tim Barnett? I think via text, maybe on Twitter, or I know he knows who I am, definitely. Yeah, he's done a video on me, so he definitely knows who I am. Do you think that your wife would have married you anyway if she knew you turned out to be an atheist? No. Because she's a true Christian. True Christians are not unequally yoked. Hang on, I got a Christian trying to barge in. Man, that German Shepherd made a mess. I'll have to clean that up later. Hide the body. The room's open. Just click on the link. That's all you have to do. What was they saying? Yeah, my wife's a true Christian. Don't be unequally yoked. What would you ask Sean if he came on your stream? I'm very much the type of guy who goes with the flow. So why does he think... I'd probably try the flying man with him. But I would ask, why does he think Christianity is true? Like, what's the real reason in his view? What got the ball started? What does he doubt continually today? Christians can't do it, though. They can't with the flying man. They can't do it. The ones who can are very low on the neediness scale, and they're high on the intelligence scale. And those Christians, they're in the friend zone. They have no problem. But most Christians, they can't even... their mind goes nuts. If we could have an MRI on their brain when I'm going through the flying man, you'll see nothing but no, that's not analogous. They just go nuts. It's unbelievable. No, Richard, I don't want to talk to you. Sorry. Am I sorry? No, I'm not sorry. I apologize for apologizing. About the cumulative case, lots of really weak evidence does raise probably a little bit. No? No! 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 I don't know, like, I always use the example of bankrupt companies. Okay, so you imagine a bankrupt company. It makes $0, okay? You take another different bankrupt company. It also makes $0. Are we any closer to 1? Take a third bankrupt company. It also makes $0. Are we above 1 yet? No. Please hear me, Christians. I am not against the cumulative case. However, each piece of evidence has to at least stand on its own at least a little bit. Yes? Martin. Are you there, Martin? I'll wait for you to get things set up. I got to change the room size here. You're on, Martin. And he left. Oh, he's back. Can you hear me, Martin? Martin, can you hear me? Yes. Okay. Finally. But you have to mute your tab where you're watching my show, okay? Or close it. Un momento. Better. Okay, here we go.
Sure.
What would you like to talk about?
Well, yeah, it's a pleasure to talk to you. I've been watching your show a long time, and I agree with everything you say, man.
Then why are you calling?
Like,
why are you calling if you agree with me?
Just to have a chat with you, man.
Okay, keep it short though, because I want to reserve this for people who disagree.
I will.
Okay.
I will. Yeah. I think it was last week. I had a chat with Jay Robin.
Okay.
And it was kind of along the lines of like the Bible is just a book, you know, and it's just stories upon stories upon stories from farmers, you know. And he just called me a lunatic, a guy that didn't know what I was talking about. So these guys they'll do anything to protect their illusion, you know.
Well, they're needy.
Basically, that's all.
Yeah,
they're very, very needy.
But you got to be very careful, like when you say things like written by farmers, because I don't believe that. I believe some very smart people who are really rich.
Intelligent farmers, very intelligent farmers.
No,
farm owners.
No, I disagree. I actually think that if we had a time machine and went back in time and found the authors, the real authors of the New Testament, the Gospels, for example, they're sitting in very expensive homes, probably in Rome, very educated. They have servants bringing them grapes. I mean, I can't prove this, and I could be wrong, but this, I think even Bart Ehrman will say that these are not schmucks. These are not low educated people. These are people highly fluent in Greek, and they're just taking stories that they heard. They're using the Old Testament and they're creating new stories.
Yeah, so that's basically where I come from. But the words are in black and white, you know, and no matter what way you twist it, you can't twist something that's plain in front of you that is just in black and white, and then trying to put another meaning onto it is ludicrous. It's ludicrous. And
the thing is, a lot of Christians agree with that too, and they say that the reason why they believe is because of personal experiences, and because of, if you're a Catholic, it's because you experience Jesus today in the Eucharist, and if you're Protestant, it's because of some personal experience. You've seen demons or angels, and so a lot of Christians, I think, agree with us that black and white text in a book is not enough.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Are you Irish or Scottish?
Sorry?
Are you Irish or Scottish?
Irish, PineCreek. Irish.
Yeah, I thought so.
Yeah.
But sometimes if you live way north in Scotland, you start to sound like the Irish, right? Or
Very
is it
true. Yeah, I live on the border, but I'm in the south of Ireland, so like I'm up north of Ireland.
So are all the stereotypes of Irish people true? Like you guys just like do nothing but drink and stuff?
It's a myth.
It's a myth. Okay, it's as much as a myth as Jesus.
Yeah, exactly. We do like to enjoy ourselves. We're very sociable, and it probably looks from the outside in. Yeah, these guys are. Yeah, but no.
Was there any Irish people in the Winter Olympics?
I couldn't tell you.
Yeah, nobody watched it this year. I mean, like the ratings were down.
Yeah, nor me. No.
Okay.
No.
Well, thanks, Martin, for hopping on.
Yeah, I won't take any more of your time. Good show. Enjoy your show.
Oh, one last tip. If you're talking to precepts like J. Robin, just give them whatever they want and ask them to lead you to Christ.
Yeah.
And they'll struggle.
He didn't give me much time. He booted me. There was no way. He didn't give me much time.
Yeah, then just ignore him.
Oh, of course. Well, listen, thank you.
Okay, take care.
Bye-bye.
Martin from Ireland, everyone. Isn't that amazing? We've got people from all over the world. This is the beauty of the PineCreek religion. Neither Irish, nor Canadian, nor Greek, nor Jew. We're all together in this happy family of PineCreekism. The true gospel. Johan.
Hey, PineCreek.
Hi. Can I show your face?
Yeah, you can show my face. Okay. I'm outside right now. Yeah, I'm a big fan. I've been watching your videos for like 2 years now.
Okay.
Yeah, and sadly, I agree with you. So I'll make it short.
Okay. When you started watching me, were you an atheist, Christian, agnostic, or what?
I was already an atheist. So
okay.
Cosmic Skeptic was the guy that turned me.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What did he say?
Kind of made me vegan too.
What did he say that made you leave Christianity?
I was about the fear of hell. That was the one thing that was keeping me. And he made a video about it. I forgot what it was, but basically, I forgot what it was, but it was like, I can use logic. If God is logical, I can use logic to show him that it's actually his fault that I don't believe. You know what I mean? He could make things obvious. He could give me evidence, but that's just a lack of evidence. It's not my fault that I don't believe. It's just I'm not convinced.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Is there anything else?
I want to talk to you. I was wondering what your thoughts are on. So I've been watching CC's replies. What was the other? There's Catholic, Canadian Catholic. Not that guy, but I forgot the name.
Capturing Christianity.
Not him. I forgot the name, but he's a Catholic.
Oh, Joshua, yeah, Canadian Catholic.
And yeah, so I was watching his replies, and almost every time, I feel like he's deliberately making excuses. Do you think they're doing it deliberately, or do you think they really believe that, like they make special pleading and stuff, and it's like obviously special pleading. Are they doing it on purpose, or are they doing it not on purpose? Like I can't tell that. I'm not sure what's going on. What do you think?
No, they are special pleading, but they don't see anything wrong with it because God's special. Any comparison to God with anything else is a category error, so therefore God is special by definition. So whenever you plead for God, you're special pleading. So I think a lot of them realize that, but make no apologies for it because they view it as true.
I can. Thank you. That was it, I guess.
Okay.
Keep doing you.
Take care. I like your name.
Thank you.
A
Bye.
lot of background noise there. Yeah, special pleading is the whole point. Without special pleading, I mean, like we just watched it here with the video of Tim Barnett. Drowning babies is wrong unless God does it. That's special pleading, right? Now, they'll view that as a correct special pleading because God is creator of the universe. He can take life as he pleases. Room's open. So far, we've had 2 atheists come on. We got one Christian who wants to come on, but his theological views are just so out there. I think, and I've talked to him twice already, briefly. And oh, by the way, I am supposed to be debating Trent Horn. He said March, early March. It's coming up soon. I'm ready to go right now. I think I am. I think I know the tactic I'll use to bring people closer to Satan. Atheists spend their time arguing that something doesn't exist. Made by Jim Bob. That complaint happens often. But you got to keep in mind, I'm a former Christian. I'm married to a Christian woman. My family's Christian. I live in Christian culture. But trust me, I'd say most atheists on planet Earth don't care about anything I'm saying about Christianity. It's like, why are you wasting your time? But I find it interesting. I find it a form of entertainment. So, and I do think certain forms of Christianity are extremely dangerous. And every single Christian listening right now agrees with me that there's some versions of Christianity that's dangerous. There's some versions of Islam that's dangerous. Every theist, every Muslim and Christian out there agrees with me. And so just view me as trying to cause doubt in those forms of religion. I mean, atheists want on here. I know there's been 2 atheists now who want to come on here, but let's keep this open. I'll accept Muslims, and I'll accept Christians, I'll accept Mormons, I'll accept Jehovah's Witnesses, I'll accept any of those types of beliefs. But you atheists are nothing but trouble. You know this. Most Christians don't care what atheists think, says House of Comments. You're right. Until they have some moment in their life that causes them extreme cognitive dissonance, and then something happens. Then they start to get recommendations on YouTube for channels like mine when they start typing certain issues. But you're right. Most Christians who, let's say, love Sean McDowell, they don't care what I think. Oh, Scientology? Now, Scientology is so incredibly weird. Would I talk to a Scientologist? Yes, of course. But like they believe some really crazy stuff. Hey, Christians? You listening, Christians? I mean, Scientologists believe that there's going to be a spaceship returning to Earth. And I think that the Earth was seeded by aliens and you got to go up these levels to get clear. I mean, just really fanciful stuff. Nothing like Christianity, which is so reasonable about a man saying, I am God and I created the universe. And before Abraham existed, I am, and walked on water and cast the demons into pigs and died and then rose again the third day. And then we'll return and then send it into clouds up to heaven. And then we'll return at the end of age on a white horse to kill a third of the population. That's not crazy. But Scientology? No, that's crazy. I have 3 non-Christians who went on. I know one's a deist. Eric says he's a non-Christian, but I've never talked to Eric before. So I'm going to let him in, even though I'm not happy about it. Maybe he's a theist, just not a Christian. Eric, are you, what are you? I need to put you in a box and seal it up.
Let me just close out my YouTube.
Ah, smart man.
So I'm just an atheist, but I wanted to come on and see if I deconverted for the wrong reasons.
Oh, well, see, that's an interesting take. I like that.
Yeah.
So, okay, why did you deconvert?
So I went to a kind of crazy middle school where they had like all the speaking in tongues and young Earth creationists, whatever.
Pentecostals.
Yeah. And I was really into science. So like my parents weren't that type of Christian, but I remember I had like an earth science class, which I really loved. It was awesome. But all of the other kids in my class, there were only like 3 other ones. They were all young earth creationists, and basically they were saying like, oh, this is like against our religious beliefs. We don't believe like all these things we're learning in class. And they eventually got the class taken out of the school, and the teacher had to like leave.
Oh, wow.
And it just made me like really mad. And I was like looking back at it, like I wasn't sure if that was like a real reason to stop believing in it. Because
how old were you?
I don't know my age. It was either like 7th or 8th grade, somewhere around there. So like I was young. Like I was always like pretty into like the religion. Like I'd get up and I'd be praying in like the prayer groups. I was never like speaking in tongues or like believing the earth was 6,000 years old, but I remember having like a lot of those personal like experiences. Like I was definitely born again a couple times.
Do you think this is the reason that keeps you out of Christianity today?
No, I definitely don't think so. Like I've gotten into like counter apologetics, I guess, more. And I like thinking about it. Just I find it really interesting that like I was able to believe all these things at one point, and then all of a sudden I just sort of deconstructed. And then I like try to figure out like why a lot of my Christian friends like believe this stuff and I don't.
Okay.
I think the whole like thing with my earth science class like may have triggered it a little more, or that maybe that was like the final push to get me to leave, but I wasn't sure if I really left.
Yeah, you should, in my opinion, you should leave Christianity for one core reason, and that is you disbelieve that Jesus was God incarnate, died for your sins, and rose again the 3rd day. Because you can be a old Earth Christian, a young Earth Christian. You can even believe that all those Pentecostal type experiences are a bunch of hooey, and still be a Christian. The core propositions I'd say 95% of Christians would agree with me on is that what I just said about Jesus. Who is Jesus?
I think a lot of Christians, though, if they, for example, stop believing in Jesus, they'll still keep a belief in God or some sort of spiritual belief.
Yeah.
In which case, I didn't do that at all. I just let it all go.
Most people don't. And the reason for that, I think, is because they realize once they see the writing on the wall for one religion, they see it for the rest. And they might still stay a deist, but yeah, specific theism is just...
Yeah, because I was wondering, because a lot of Christians, they learn all of like these, whatever miracles or all these reasons to believe. And I was thinking like, even if they were convinced that maybe this one part of their religious group was incorrect, I would assume that they would most likely keep all of the other beliefs as true. Because, finding out one thing in your religion is wrong doesn't necessarily like make it all wrong.
Yeah, no, that's true.
That would be like being an atheist because of all these scientific reasons, and then if like one science thing is disproven and it turns out it was wrong, you wouldn't stop believing in science being true.
But there is quite a few people who make that progression from a fundamentalist type Christian to a liberal Christian or progressive Christian, and then the last step is out. And I think for a lot of fundamentalist Christians, it's young earth creationism when they realize, oh, the evidence is overwhelming that the earth is older than 10,000 years. That's all you need. And then they start to have to change their views on the Bible. And then before you know it, they're starting to question the concepts of hell and what that really means. And then if they become universalists, they're basically just a feel-good type of Christian who realizes, oh, I can help the poor without being a Christian, and they leave. They're done.
Yeah, that's true. The other thing I was wondering about, you've been talking a lot recently on, where's it going with this? Like standards of evidence and how you think their standards of evidence are equivalent to yours. They just don't believe the same thing. They give Christianity a pass.
Yeah.
I don't see how they can do that for like, say, just for Christianity and not believe like Islam is true. And then if you were to like, you always like make those comparisons, right, to Christians, but then when you make those really fair comparisons, sometimes they'll understand it, but it doesn't just deconvert them. Like they keep.
Well, that's because they have within their holy text safeguards against that. So with Islam, for example, they'll say that, well, if Christianity is true, then Islam is false. But Islam says that Jesus was that Christianity is true in some sense, and so that means Christianity is the right one. And then they'll very easily see problems within the Quran that they don't see in their own holy text, and they'll say that their scripture is complete, and that anybody who comes and speaks a new gospel, whatever, is a false teacher. Muhammad is a false teacher. And so, but you notice the Jews have the same thing. Like if you look in the Old Testament, it says that basically that the canon's closed, that the word's complete. So they don't see that. They don't see that basically they're the Mormonism to Judaism. Christians can't see that, but they're really Christians are the Mormonism to Judaism. So I don't know. It's what changes, what causes this kind of collapse in belief? How do they get out of that? This is why I developed the Flying Man, because I think it's right on Christianity, and I do believe that they are the same as us.
I thought the Flying Man thing was good, and I tried that on some of my friends because I've got a lot of Catholic
Let me
friends,
guess.
but
Let me guess. They
didn't
said
work.
They said but right. This is not analogous. This is
So when I did it, it was like I couldn't get them to accept it until I had pretty much the whole Catholic Church in place. And a big thing for them was like church history. They were like, oh well, we have this line of succession, and
well, no, the thing is,
it was just,
your goal is not to try to get them to accept the Flying Man. The goal is to see where the belief switch turns on.
I couldn't find a point. I couldn't get it to flip until I had the entire religion.
Oh, that's success. Then the Flying Man worked, because what they're admitting is that Paul's not good enough. They're admitting that Paul plus the Gospel of Mark is not good enough, and Matthew's not good enough, Luke's not good enough, John's not good enough. They basically have to take all that, add in some church tradition because they're Catholic, and add maybe even the papacy or whatever, and maybe throw in some seasoning called personal experience in the Eucharist, and then they'll believe in the Flying Man.
Yeah, but I just like when I did that, I tried then comparing it to other faiths. I was like, okay, well, if you believe in Catholicism, why don't you believe in Mormonism? And they just bring up all the differences between the two as their reason for not believing it.
Well, that's because you have to take it step by step, and not because what's happening is their brain's being bombarded with all these reasons, and they just mix them all together. But if you pull them out, pluck them out one by one, this is where they are the same as us. They will agree with you that just based on a creed, that's not good enough. And so my goal with Christians is to find points of agreement. Say, look, we are the same. It's not good enough. Paul's not good enough. You admit this. I admit this. And I think very slowly over time, that has an impact.
Because I just haven't gotten it to work. I know you've gotten it to work on multiple
It's not going to work.
occasions.
It's not going to work at the moment. It's never going to work to get them to doubt their faith entirely at the moment. But what's going to happen is the people you were talking to are going to go home when they're lying on their bed just before they fall asleep. They're going to think about that conversation. They're going to replay it in their head.
I've been trying this for like 2 or 3 years yet, and none of them have budged. Maybe I'm just
The
not
fly,
as good
the,
at
fl-
it as
the
you.
flying man for 2 or 3 years. I didn't think it was
well,
that
not
old.
Flying man, but just trying to like make them question their faith.
No, but the point is, you're not trying to get them to question their faith per se. You're trying to get them to question one strand of evidence, just one.
Okay.
And then once you have success there, then you have them question two.
But one strand of evidence doesn't work for them. They need the whole thing.
I know, but it becomes a house of cards. So basically, you're playing. What's the game? The game where you pull out
Jenga?
Yeah, you're playing Jenga with them.
Yeah.
But you don't focus on all the bricks of the Jenga. You just pull one at a time. Some of them are near the bottom, some are near the top, and you just pull them out one at a time. And eventually, it has to crumble.
Well, I tried that. My Jenga block that I picked was the Shroud of Turin, and the Lady of Guadalupe, because they were like, well, these two things I hold really dear to my beliefs. So if I were to question these two big miracles, then I would like be doubting my faith. So I spent like a bunch of time like researching all of like the reasons that the Shroud of Turin likely isn't legit, and there's a lot of them, like the weave of the cloth. You can kind of date the age, and every single time I brought up like a valid point as to why this thing isn't legit, they make up some like weird reason. Like at one point it was supposed to be the cloth covering Jesus's body, and it got the stains from like his, I don't know, dead body juices, and then the next moment the stains got on the cloth from like light coming out of Jesus's body. And there's just a lot of like there's like an excuse for everything.
Try to grant them as much as you can. Say, yeah, maybe this cloth is from the 1st century, but many people were crucified. How do you know? How did you figure out this is Jesus and not someone else? Not the criminal next to him.
That's church tradition, though.
Then you ask it. See, they believe that church tradition's infallible. Is that right or no?
They don't think it's infallible, but they think it's pretty accurate. They're like, well, how could all of these people be deceived? We've had this checked by doctors and like scientists appointed by the church, and they make sure that a couple of the scientists aren't Catholic. They make sure a couple are atheists, and then these scientists like approve it.
How old are these people you're talking to? Your age?
My age, like college age.
Okay.
And a lot of them are really smart. They're not like idiots. Like they know what they're talking about.
So I think in situations like that where they're throwing on ad hoc explanations and so forth, do the sealed envelope thought experiment. So you have the envelope's never wrong. Okay. The envelope has the truth about the Shroud of Turin in it. And you open the envelope and it says, it's not from Jesus. It's not Jesus's shroud. Then ask them this question. How do you explain all the things you've been telling me now that we know the truth that it's not from Jesus? How would you do it?
Well, then you do what Occam's razor to figure out, is it more likely it was supernatural or natural? And I mean, they'd probably budge at that point and be like, yeah, I start doubting my faith, but I'm not going to get them to do it for real until I can actually.
Well, who cares? I mean, it's not your goal.
Yeah.
If your goal is to get them to think critically, so use that thought experiment. You know the truth in this thought experiment that the Shroud of Turin has nothing to do with Jesus. Now come up with an explanation for all these like 3 or 4 things you mentioned. How would you explain it?
Mm-hmm.
And if they can, then you can ask them the question, well, what's more likely? That this is from Jesus or the explanations you just gave yourself?
Well, oftentimes they find the natural explanations to be like really ridiculous. Like when they bring up like the I think it was it Fatima who like appeared in the sky or something like that. They're like, well, how did all of these people say they saw Fatima? And then they're like, well, was everyone there crazy? Are they insane? And then I'm like,
when you talk to them, is it just you and one person, or is there a group?
It's you. Sometimes it's me and one person. Sometimes it's a group. We like bond over it, I guess. Like we're not like Like,
because you want to avoid group, because if it's you versus 3 Christians, then they're going to say things to bolster the confidence of their friends. And so what you want to do is just one-on-one. It's more productive.
yeah, I have been more productive with one-on-one, but I kind of like the challenge. Of and also I don't have any other like, I mean, I have a couple other atheist friends, but none of them like really care to think about any of this stuff. Like they don't care about leading people to hell. I think it's kind of fun.
Ask them the when it comes to natural versus supernatural. Ask them the question about the epileptic versus demon possessed, because I think they will give the same answer as you. You walk down the street with one of your friends, you see someone on the ground seizing up, frothing at the mouth, and then you ask the question: is it more likely to you that they're demon possessed or they're an epileptic?
Well, to them, they already believe demons exist. So in that case, they'd say that it's maybe more likely they're epileptic, but they think there's a chance they're demon possessed.
Okay, that's fine. Give them that chance. But if they concede, if they admit it's more likely they're an epileptic, they're done.
Why?
Because then when you pluck the pieces of evidence for Catholicism out and you look at the evidence one by one, they're going to get that exact same answer. Yeah, it is more likely that Jesus didn't appear to the 500. And it's more likely that this is just a creed, a made-up thing. Maybe at Pentecost it was like a Holy Spirit type thing that Pentecostals go through, and that Jesus didn't really appear to them bodily. They're going to have to concede on each of those points that a naturalistic explanation actually makes more sense there. Yeah, if they agree with the epileptic versus demon possessed.
Yeah, that would work. You could get them to think it's natural, but then once you have one case where a priest goes and confirms that someone was actually possessed, then there's no way of disproving that to them.
Priests are no more smarter than you.
Well, they can sense the demon in there.
Oh, okay. If that's what they say, ask them. Well, okay, how would you test that? Like, could they be wrong? And then when the times they are wrong, how do we know when they're wrong? So bring up studies like we have one really demon-possessed person that a bishop says is really demon-possessed, been demon-possessed for months. And then we got an actor who's pretending to be demon-possessed. And then we have one person who's not acting or demon-possessed at all, just a normal person. And see if the priest can get it right at least 9 times out of 10. And I bet you they can't.
Yeah, I would just expect the same thing, but there's also like stories where they'll say like, oh, this person was possessed, but then they started floating up in the air. And then it's like, okay, well, did the priest and all these other people who saw that hallucinate, or were they all faking it? And then they're going to say, oh, well, it's unlikely that they faked it, and it's likely that it was an actual demon possession. Because to them, like, someone faking that or like hallucinating that experience, like a bunch of people doing that, to them it's unlikely.
Yeah, and if they say stuff like there's accounts of people levitating, just with a straight face, say that your neighbor levitated and you saw it. But
I did that and it worked. When I did the Flying Man, I was like, okay, well, do you think this man flew after you read this stuff and you read this stuff? And they're going to say, well, yeah, I think it's possible they flew. And I'm like, well, how do you believe that? Well, and then they're like, oh, well, I already believe people can start flying through my religion, so why couldn't it happen in this case?
Yeah.
And then I have to restart and be like, okay, forget your religion, pretend you never learned about Catholicism and you didn't know people could fly in the Bible. And then when I do the experiment, then they don't think the person would fly.
Yeah, isn't that interesting?
Yeah. But I hope, do you write all these thought experiments down? Because it would be cool to have like a list of these online somewhere.
No, I don't. They're stored up here.
Up here. Yeah. One day when you're like bored and you have like too much time on your hands, you should like type it all out and then make like a guide for how to make a Christian question their faith. I think that would be pretty cool.
Yeah, but then, they could just watch my YouTube videos.
Yeah, well, you have so many YouTube videos. You got like how many hundreds of hours?
Yeah, it's probably in the thousands.
Like, I remember I watched one of your YouTube videos where you brought up like a really fair point, and then I was trying to go back to find it, and there was just like too much stuff to look through.
You remember what it was? I can
can't
get Myron
remember.
to look it up.
That was a while ago.
Okay.
it was something about people like talking about firsthand accounts of Jesus and like I don't know, stuff like that, like historical accounts of religion.
Yeah.
I forget what you were using it for, but anyway, I thought it was cool.
But yeah, my general piece of advice is really focus and narrow in on just one thing, and whenever your theist friend says something like, but what about this, what about that, just say, okay, we can talk about that later, but let's just focus on this one thing and see if we can come to an agreement. And that is very powerful, because I've gotten even Christians like Mike Winger to admit this. I think it was like 4 or 5 years ago now, where he said, yeah, Doug, we can doubt each piece of evidence for Christianity, but when you put them all in one big vat and stir them up, then we got something.
Yeah, but sometimes it works the other way around, where they need every little piece to believe the religion. But on the other hand, you can also take the religion and pull out one thing, and then it won't fall down for some reason. Like you can disprove one miracle that they said was like important to them, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh no, it's not that big of a deal.
And be very honest with your friends and say, if this is true, say, all these miracle stories you're telling me doesn't make a difference to me. I mean, I don't care one bit. Look them in the eyes and say, I don't care about any miracle you tell me about. What I want to see is, with my own eyes,
yeah,
and then dip that little napkin in water if you're at a restaurant, this lit on fire in the name of Jesus, or in the name of Mary, whoever they believe in.
Oh, well, I pulled up that Bible verse. What was that? It was in like 2 Kings or something. And I like was like, okay, well, yeah, can't you light this on fire? I think I used a different example. And then I pulled up the Bible verse and I substituted Jesus for God, like you usually do. And they were like, no, you can't substitute Jesus for God. They're like different parts of the Trinity.
Well, no,
like
you got to be careful. You got to use the word, the being. You got to use the word being, God the being. Yeah. And Jesus is God the being.
Because I think they talked about, well, in this verse we believe it's God the Father, and then I'm like, well, wouldn't Jesus be doing the same thing since they're like kind of the same person? And then they were like, no.
Yeah. Well, you could ask them, like, do you think Jesus disagreed with God the Father on anything?
Yeah, that would be an interesting one. Did they ever like have arguments over what they should be doing?
I think they did. I think Jesus is saying, do I really have to be crucified, Dad?
Yeah. And he's like, yes, you do. And he crucified. That's like the worst father ever. He crucifies his son when he could have just forgiven everyone without me crucifying his son. He's all powerful. I don't know. The only thing I have a really tough time talking to my Christian friends about is personal experiences, because I don't want to like be like, oh, well, you experienced this, and I think you're just like, we're hallucinating, or we're not thinking straight. Because like, if when I was a Christian, I was having my personal experiences, if I like had someone tell me that something happened that didn't actually happen, I would have been like kind of offended.
Yeah, people get offended. You have to tiptoe like you're walking on eggshells. And I suck at this, but you kind of have to say stuff like, I'm not denying your experience. I'm not denying that you believe that you saw certain things. What I am saying is maybe your attribution is faulty. You know, you got to say that in a nice way. I'll just say, no, I don't believe that this happened. And I think it's probably because of social priming. You were in church, right? Or this coincidence, maybe you were by yourself, but these coincidences happen all the time. It's bound to happen to you. That doesn't mean God has anything to do with it. And how would you tell the difference if he did or didn't? You start bringing up these questions with them, and they start to cry.
Yeah, because I'll point out like, oh, well, this person in this other religion had this experience, but then they'll go, oh, well, my God could have given them that experience because maybe for some reason it's better for them to believe in that religion and have some relationship in God than not have any relationship with God at all.
Oh, wow. Anyhow, I'll let you go. I got some other people who want to.
Thank you for having me on. I'll try to get a Christian to join us.
Hey, if you play poker tonight.
I'm not a betting man. I always lose too much money in poker. So.
Okay. Take care.
Bye, you too.
Lucy, I see you wanted to come in. You can call back. Made by Jim Bob said, Jim Bob, I see you wanted to end too, right? You can call back. Doug, if it lit on fire, your worldview would force you into a naturalistic explanation, says Made by Jim. Yeah, I hear this a lot. And my response to this is, you could be right, but let's see. If my water-soaked napkin actually lit on fire, I might try to explain it away naturalistically. You're right, Jim Bob, that could happen. But you know what? Let's find out. Let's find out. Is this Jim Bob? I see you, Jim Bob, but I don't hear you. There's a gearbox on top. Make sure your audio... Oh, hang on. Now I see you. Don't go anywhere. There we go. Jim
Hey,
Bob.
Doug. Hey,
Hi.
how are you?
Good. Are you the guy I'm talking to in the live stream chat?
Yes.
Okay. And you said that if my water soap napkin lit on fire, I'd explain it away naturalistically?
Yeah, that's just an example, but the point is that we determine what we believe to be the case or what we believe to be possible or not possible given by our starting point. And if you have a naturalistic starting point, it wouldn't be absurd to question or to try to find some other way of describing or explaining what is occurring. I would actually think that is rational to do that. But that's not to say that there couldn't be other things that occur that you would necessarily just deny off the bat because it didn't fit into that explanation format.
Okay, yeah, and you could be right. But I still think, why don't we try it and see?
Yeah, I guess. But if it was something in the realm of miraculous, it wouldn't be something. And I know from your point of view, this would just be convenient, and I'd grant you that is that you couldn't replicate it because we would be the ones observing, but not the ones acting it, right? So we wouldn't be able to demonstrate. Like, let's say if a miracle was possible and you saw it, Doug or Jim Bob wouldn't be able to replicate it, right? By definition.
Well, we could do what Elijah did and say ahead of time, this is about to happen. Gather around, wake up the children, wake up the neighbors. It's about to happen. Let's get the video cameras on. Let's get different biases in the room. And here we go.
Right. But it wouldn't be like actually doing a scientific demonstration. Or,
No, I don't need, I'm not a scientism type guy. I don't need it to be replicated every time. But you know what would be cool is if it happened, let's say, every 3 months around the world, where ahead of time, not post, but a prophet of God, a real prophet, says on March 1st in Canada and Toronto, we will go to a graveside and raise someone from the dead. God has foretold me this will happen, and let's go see.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Every 3 months. Around the world, pick a new country every 3 months. In a few years, you've had all the countries covered. Actually, you take 50 years, but yeah.
Would you accept it if it was 3 months, but it just the next every consecutive thing that happened was a month off?
Well, as long as it's foretold, as long as it's like we have time to set up the cameras, the audio equipment, get different people from different cultures and religions there to witness it. People who hate Christianity, people who love Christianity, people who are indifferent.
That brings up something I've been thinking about. I'd love to run past you. Is that would you define through your worldview a miracle as like let's say a suspension of physical laws of physics and the regularity of nature, things we know to occur over time? Would you accept that definition?
I think so, but I think William Lane Craig had a really good definition. I forget what it was off the top of my head. But to me, miracles are like pornography. You know it when you see it.
But to describe it, if you did see it, would you accept that? Like a suspension in the laws of physics, regularity of nature, or something that couldn't be explained by the laws that we know.
Would I accept it as a miracle?
As a adequate definition.
To me, I'm not quite sure what you're asking, but to me, if I drop this pen and the camera's not upside down. If I drop it and it goes up instead of down, and it's because you prayed in the name of Jesus, that's a miracle.
Right. What if you didn't pray? It just happened. You wouldn't necessarily categorize it that way.
No, I would still say it's a miracle.
Okay. So a miracle to you could just be something that hasn't been explained yet, but it could be something that's inexplainable.
Sure.
Also.
Sure.
Okay. So both of those can be true. But what's true about both of those cases is that the current knowledge of explanation of law can't describe what's going on.
Yeah.
At the point.
Right.
Yeah. Well, this is the thought experiment I was doing. Is I was trying to look at even Christians or non-Christians would accept the definition that a miracle is the suspension of these laws, something that actually cannot be explained by the laws themselves as we know them. And it got me thinking about how, well, that's the common way of looking at it. We think it's insane to think that these things can be suspended. And our eyes would be perked up and ears would be perked up if it happened. We'd be like, what the hell was that? Is this magic? What's going on, right? We'd be surprised. But what's interesting is that the precondition for that to be the definition of a miracle, the regularity of these laws themselves couldn't actually be described by the laws, right? You with me?
Sure.
The regularities themselves, most people just take it ad hoc, right? They just exist. There are regularities. That's all we can know about them. We can describe them. We can predict with them. And so that's great.
I feel like you're trying to weasel out of my asking for something amazing to happen. That's what I feel like's happening right now. You're trying to weasel out of it.
Oh, you're asking for something to happen?
Yeah, I say many times, my water soaked napkin, light it on fire. And what I'm hearing you're talking about definitions, you're talking about the laws of nature, can't explain itself. You're kind of giving what I call a presuppositional type spiel.
Oh, well, first of all, I didn't know I was put on the spot to demonstrate a miracle.
No, I'm not asking you to. I'm just saying I often do ask that. And right now, what I'm sensing is you're trying to explain or try to.
No, I'm almost done. I'm not really.
Okay, what's your main point?
My main point is, if our common definition of what's considered a miracle is the suspension of laws because those laws can't describe the thing that happened, I'm asking, wouldn't the existence of those laws to begin with be categorized as miraculous themselves? That's not to say I'm evoking a person or a god or anything, but just as we describe miracles, wouldn't we have to necessarily put the laws themselves in the category?
No, we're comparing and contrasting these set of laws with something that is going against them.
Right. The ability to do that, though, right, is given by that they're regular.
So you're basically saying just the fact that we have laws of nature to begin with is a miracle, right?
Yes.
Okay, I'll give that to you, but I'm still going to ask for something that goes against it.
Right, to be counted as a miracle. But that's what's weird is that we can't really discuss what is and isn't a miracle.
Sure, we can. Our standard is the miraculous laws of nature.
No, not if. Right now, okay, but if the standard by which we measure a miracle is the suspension of that which we call miraculous, we have a problem.
Well, that's because you just defined both as miraculous. You're trying to get rid of the distinction between supernatural and natural, correct?
Not get rid of. I'm just looking at it like, well, does that warrant a new definition of what a miracle is, given that most people would agree, given the dialogue tree I just ran, that we would have to consider the existence of those things.
I just want to say wow. I just want to say wow. I want you to say wow. That's all.
What?
So if you and I are walking down the street together and we see a car levitate and fly up into the air with, nobody in it, you're going to say wow, and I'm going to say wow.
Right.
If you and I go to a graveside together and we see the ground shaking and bubbling of soil and a dead person come out that you and I both know has been dead, you're going to say wow, and I'm going to say wow. I'm just asking for wow, the wow factor.
Yes, I'm saying that both the existence of the regularities that are suspended are also wow. So
wait, no, hang on. You don't say wow when you see a car rolling down the street, and I don't say wow when we see a car rolling down the street, because they follow. So let's forget about the term miraculous. Let's forget about these definitions. Let's just talk about wow versus not wow.
Okay, wow is car floating. Also, wow is the laws that allow cars not to float. Not to float.
You're basically saying
both are wows.
You're basically saying, isn't it amazing we exist?
Not just exist, that those laws are so regular that we can say wow when they're suspended.
Yeah, but the thing is, from my perspective, you can use you're a Christian, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So your explanation of this, it's because of God created it this way, and God is logical and uniform and doesn't change, and therefore the laws of logic are uniform, don't change, and the uniformity of nature, blah 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 blah. And I say, well, just the existence of the universe is a brute fact, and it's necessary, and it has these properties. And so, if you want to call that wow, then we'll just call the car levitating wow wow. We'll just double it.
That's fine with me. So brute facts are wow, car levitating is wow wow.
There you go. So we're agreed?
I'm okay with that.
Okay. Wow and wow wow. See, this is all you need. You don't need all this philosophical type language.
No, I appreciate that. I'm also newbie, so when I start going into these worlds, and you share some of the world of philosophy with these other channels and stuff, I actually appreciate your application and how you come across, because you really do want to just have fun, interesting conversations, even if there's some
Can I try to lead you away from Christianity?
You can try, yeah, sure.
Okay, I got consent.
But wait, what? But why would you?
Oh, it's fun.
Okay, so just fun, just pragmatism. It's not like you're
oh no, just for the dopamine rush. Just for the dopamine rush.
Okay, I'll give you your fix for today.
Being a Christian, that means that you believe Jesus was God?
Yeah.
Yeah, and you believe that Jesus died for your sins and rose again the third day?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, why do you believe that? What's one reason? Just give me one. For now.
Well, I believe that if God exists, and I believe God exists, that God would have to be knowable, and so I
repeat the question I asked you. What did I ask you?
You said, why do I believe something?
What did I ask you?
You said,
why do you believe?
Oh.
Why do you believe that
he rose?
That Jesus is God and rose from the dead, yes.
Oh, why do I believe it? Because I believe God must be knowable and must be known in the flesh.
God could exist. Can God be knowable and exist and Jesus not rise from the dead? Is that possible? Is it possible?
It's possible, but I guess.
Okay, so I'm giving you God, and I'm giving you that God's knowable. My question again is, why do you believe Jesus was God and died and rose from the dead?
I guess those two would be somewhat circular. Is that rising from the dead doesn't necessitate that one is God, but it does indicate someone can transcend death.
Why do you believe Jesus rose from the dead?
Why? I don't know if why is even a rational question. Why? Why do I like chocolate? Because I like chocolate. I mean, I don't know what the why is a weird. I reject the can you?
You're rejecting the word why now?
Yeah, absolutely.
Why are you wearing a red hat right now?
I put it on. It happened. No. The rest. Do you have kids? You have kids, right?
Yeah. I got two.
Okay, why? I don't know if they're grown yet, but why? At some point, there's no other way you can go except for a circular answer when you get to why, because why can go on endless regress forever.
I can't believe we're stuck on why you believe Jesus Christ rose from the dead.
But
you're refusing. Okay.
Why is it a good question? Why do you have a channel?
Fill in the blank.
Why is it fun?
Jim Bob, fill in the blank. Jesus Christ. No. Let me be very careful here. I'm going to be you. I believe Jesus Christ rose from the dead because fill in the blank.
Because because I believe Jesus is God incarnate, and he can rise from the dead. He can defy death. That's why I believe.
Okay. Why do you believe Jesus is God incarnate and can rise from the dead? I believe that is true because fill in the blank.
It's circular. It would be the same answer.
So
my beliefs are entirely circular at the core.
Okay. So if I were to say, I don't believe Jesus Christ is God and rose from the dead because I don't believe Jesus Christ is God and rose from the dead, is that a good thing for me to say?
Yeah, actually, that would be very clear. I wouldn't need to.
Wow, you're willing to go there.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes down to it, because
so now Myron's over here. He's just on the other side of my monitors. Okay, he's listening in, and he admitted to me this morning that he's agnostic and he's thinking about Christianity, but he's also just thinking about staying an atheist. He heard your argument for why you believe Jesus Christ.
It's not an argument.
Oh, sorry. He heard what you had to say, and then he heard what I have to say, and he's trying to make up his mind who he should go with. Any suggestions?
Neither. Go with his own soul and spirit, which is leading him back to questioning whether God exists.
Okay.
And I would say that Doug is helping him out with.
Hang on, Myron just said something. He said that you're full of crap and I'm right on.
You're a liar.
Why would Myron say something like that?
Is Myron a dog?
No, Myron's right over there. He's my assistant. He's a terrible assistant.
Okay.
But why would Myron say such a thing when really you and I are saying the same things? We're just opposite, but our reasonings, we're both circular, right?
Yeah, ask Myron. Myron will have his own. If you keep asking why to Myron, we'll get to the same place as us.
Does it matter to you whether or not it's true that Jesus rose from the dead?
Does it matter if it's true or not?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it does matter, but again, from the beginning of this call, there's standards for what we accept as possible and impossible are given by our starting points. So you and I have different starting points of what we think is possible. So it's not that I could know for a fact, given evidential historicity and doing all of the foundational, like the classical foundational approach, the whole thing, I can't
hang on.
I can't prove it using the shared.
Hang on. You said something interesting. Do you believe Jesus Christ rose from the dead because it's possible?
I accept it because I believe it's possible. I don't believe it just because I think it's possible, but I think those two might be connected. I don't know how to separate them necessarily.
Because
could we?
It's possible.
Can we separate those?
It's possible there's a Volkswagen Beetle on the dark side of the moon. Do you believe it?
Yeah. Do I believe that?
No, you don't. Go ahead, make it quick. Just say no.
No, I don't. Yeah, I don't see a logical reason why that would be the case. Like,
but it's logically possible for a Volkswagen Beetle to be on the dark side of the moon. But you don't believe it, and I don't believe it. So when you say it's possible that Jesus Christ rose from the dead, what is it inside you that goes, yes, I believe it?
Well, it's not one thing. It would be like a whole core of.
I'm just asking for one. So far, I haven't got anything other than that.
Well, I already told you.
God is.
I believe God. To believe in God, my standard would be, well, he must be knowable, and he must also transcend. Exist somehow in the physical, in some form to be known. So that's why.
Why do you believe that God has to be physical?
Not God himself physical, but manifest in a physical way.
Okay, why do you believe that God has to manifest himself physically?
In my view, yes, that had to have happened for us to know the embodiment of what God is in a man.
So Moses and Abraham didn't know God?
Actually, in the before Christ, we would kind of say that that God could be known through basically through some revelatory experience.
Okay, so you don't need Jesus manifested in physical form then to know God. You just admitted that.
No, it's not. It's not a necessity. I don't think.
Okay. So let me ask you again. Why do you believe Jesus Christ rose from the dead?
No. To know God exists, I don't think so. To know the personhood of God, yes. I would say those are two different things. So you could know God exists and know of God, and I can't put myself back in those days, but I could say you could probably derive something from your intuition.
Didn't Moses talk to God?
Yeah.
Okay. This before the manifestation of Jesus.
Right. I don't know. I'm not sure. I'll just be honest. I don't know how to distinguish between direct revelation and that kind of thing in the Old Testament and knowledge of the personhood of God through a physical life.
Okay, but let's review what's just happened here. I asked you why you believe Jesus Christ rose from the dead, and one of the reasons you filled in the blank was because you believe God has to be knowable, and one way that he can be knowable is through the manifestation of in physical form. But now you've just agreed that you don't need that in order to know God. So that reason is now gone.
Right. No. Distinction. The personhood would be different than God, like some essence of God.
So you're saying Jesus Christ had to rise from the dead because we would have to know who Jesus.
For instance, right now, if Myron, I really believe there's a Myron, by the way. So I really hope you're honest.
There is a Myron in real life.
Okay, good. If Myron had some experience, and many people could have an experience, and they say, no, I'm quite confident to the deepest of my mind and my body and my soul to know that I had an experience with God. That doesn't mean that they necessarily can know the personhood of God through a life, right? So, but that you can know something, right? But not the personhood. And so that broadness, and I guess I don't really accept this, but it's a useful term. I don't accept the fullness of these distinctions, but general revelation versus special.
Let's review. We got to back up.
Yeah. I
believe Jesus Christ rose from the dead because fill in the blank now.
Because God made himself knowable through man.
You believe Jesus Christ rose from the dead because God made himself knowable through man.
Through flesh. And that was from the beginning. So you can't divorce the wholeness of Christian doctrine from that, because we also believe that Christ's Son is also eternal from the start.
How does his resurrection have anything to do with him being knowable as a man? He was knowable as a living man before he died.
Okay. So you're right. Yeah, that's a good distinction. That it's not that he coming back to life or defying death would be just an indication of things of having all that God has in power. But you're right. It's not necessary that he died.
Okay, so let's back up and try again.
Except for knowing what sacrifice is, knowing what long suffering is as a virtue, we would know that through that whole experience.
Okay, so I believe Jesus Christ rose from the dead because I know God through his sacrifice, and something like that.
Well, because God would be knowable through becoming flesh, and then the life of that person, whose embodiment of all that God is, would demonstrate sacrifice, so that we know what sacrifice and love and compassion, all of that is.
Okay.
Good.
My neighbor died and rose again.
Okay.
Do you want to know why I believe that?
Sure.
Because I believe God wants to be knowable through the death and resurrection of my neighbor. Do you believe that actually happened?
Wait, you're calling your neighbor God?
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't, because that would just be arbitrary. There's nothing connected. There's no previous knowledge or prophecy about your
How do you
neighbor.
know? I haven't even
You're
told
not-
you about him.
Well, you're making it up on the spot. You're just doing a hypothetical to demonstrate possibly that could be an interpretation.
Well,
of
are you
something
saying
occurred
that?
now.
Are you saying that I believe in the resurrection of my neighbor for a bad reason? Because I gave the same reason you gave.
No, I would say that you're making up a reason. It's not even a bad reason. It's not even a reason.
What's that?
It's not a real reason.
Hang on, Myron. Myron's saying you're
It's not
making
real.
it up too. Now, how do we
I
solve
didn't-
this problem?
I didn't make it up.
Well, let's say whoever wrote the New Testament made it up. That's what Myron said. No, I'm not saying that. Myron's saying that.
That's a positive claim. He has to demonstrate that occurred.
Myron has to prove that it didn't happen.
That he made it up. That something was made up. How are you going to
Hang on.
reconcile that?
He said they colluded. He said that he was watching Dale Ellison the other day, and he said that they were not independent witnesses at all. They don't state in the first person that they actually even seen the whole thing, and that they quote each other word for word. That's what Myron said. Isn't that proof enough?
No, you're just going to have to go on faith based on that.
Okay, well,
still with limited access to knowledge in that
Myron wants to know what you mean by faith. He goes, "Where'd this word come from?"
We all have faith. Faith is basically what we put in from hearing. So faith comes from hearing, and so the things you hear, you either put faith in those things or not.
No, but Myron wants to know what you mean by faith. You're saying you got to put it into practice or whatever, but what is actually the definition of faith? Myron wants to know.
Faith. I mean, there's faith like belief with the absence of evidence.
Faith is the absence of belief in the absence of evidence.
Belief. I would say belief and faith sometimes could be synonymous. Belief being the absence. Faith in something.
But how are you using it?
Using the word faith.
Yeah, because you just introduced the word faith for the first time.
Right, you have to have faith in some level of accuracy in the transmission of information over time. You have faith. We all have faith in that.
Okay, so are you talking about the word trust now? Is that what you mean by faith?
Trust. Yeah, I guess you could probably use the word trust as far as like hindsight. Like I trust that the narrative that's given about those set of facts or not facts.
Now we're getting somewhere. Why Jim Bob trusts the historicity of the resurrection narrative because fill in the blank.
Why do I believe the historicity of the Bible itself?
Why do you have faith? Why do you trust in the historical narrative of Jesus' resurrection? Historical quotes.
Well, I would tie that into the whole thing. It's not just the one. That's just one instance, right? So are you asking me why do I believe one instance that's actually connected to a whole set of beliefs that's tied to a holistic worldview? Because that's what you end up having to go up against. You can't, which is why this might work with people, because you want to zero in on something and then formulate sort of like a logical way of deteriorating it as its own thing. But
can I have just give me one reason why you trust the narrative that Jesus rose from the dead?
Because I trust the timelessness of truth that's within the Bible. That's beyond the claims of physicality or.
Why do you trust the timeliness of the truth of the Bible?
Because I believe the Bible corresponds to the nature of man at a metaphysical level, like metaphoric truth that I believe, from my point of view, supersedes material truth, like things we know about the world. I think knowing about us as humans and beings is superior to.
Can I summarize what you just said? You trust the truth of the Bible because I think you basically said because it reflects the reality you see.
No, because I don't see the reality. My view is that human beings are in the world, but we're not actually of the world. The things we appeal to are actually not found in nature at all. And the Bible talks to those things, whereas what is possible, what didn't happen, historicity, all this stuff, doesn't actually.
Jim Bob, it's like we're here, and then I ask you a question, and we go boom, and then we ask boom. It's like we're going all over the place here.
Well, no, you want certain answers, but I don't think you're listening to my answers.
No, I am, and I do understand your answers.
What did I just say? What did I just say then?
You were talking about the truth that you view the Bible, you trust the Bible as a truth, as a reflection of, I think you said, of your experience. And then you started talking about the supernatural and the natural, and that you can't always, it sounded like to me, and I'm paraphrasing, that you are not making a real distinction between those two, that you view them kind of all scrunched together. Is that right?
No,
because this is reflecting what you said like an hour ago now, probably, about when we were talking about what is a miracle.
Mm-hmm.
And you're saying, well, everything's a miracle because the uniformity of nature is a miracle. And I think we're circling around back to that.
I mean, kind of. Not directly, but maybe indirectly, because the line of questioning you're proposing here is regarding what the Bible is and what is true or not true of the Bible, how much of the Bible is made up. It's alluding to all of these questions, right?
Is there anything in the Bible that you think is not true, that purports to be true?
I'm still reading the whole Bible. I am actually only 2.5 years back to Christianity after 15 years of atheism.
This is good.
I'm actually reading now.
Okay, you went from Christianity to atheism to Christianity?
Mm-hmm.
And you were 15 years an atheist? And you were 2 years from being it? That's 2 years ago you were an atheist?
Maybe 3 now. Yeah.
Okay, so what happened 2 to 3 years ago to change your mind?
Well, I think it was a combination of some level of introduction to any level of philosophy and logic, and getting into metaphysics and what,
Why did you get into metaphysics and philosophy 2 or 3 years ago about this issue?
Why did that happen?
Yeah, why do you think it happened, at least?
I'm not sure. I'm a political cartoonist and satirist, so I use really funny absurdities, right, in culture and stuff, and I attack right politics and left politics, and so my format was actually kind of like showing that format of like reductios and stuff like that. Okay. And so people would mention those things, and then I was like, maybe this just even rudimentary understanding of these concepts and some of their history even can help me with my work. And so that's how I got into it. Yeah. So I started looking at worldviews in general.
Okay. And why did you leave Christianity in the first place and become an atheist?
I mean, I think it was just natural rebellion, being like a 20-year-old, moving to Los Angeles with my friend, living in a house, hedonism, just like, basically I swapped religion for transhumanism and futurism and stuff like that for a while. But I would say
that's what happens when you go to LA.
Yeah, definitely. That's a prerequisite, actually. I would say. But I don't think I wasn't raised with a strong understanding of how to interpret and look at things from a worldview perspective. I was raised in a very, just read the Bible without a lens to which to digest or even critique it.
Are you married?
And so, yes.
When did you get married?
Like the last 2 years. I didn't do a proper, whole thing.
You know why I'm laughing, right?
Why?
I asked you when you became a Christian. You said 2 to 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked when you got married, and you said 2 years ago. Is your wife a Christian?
Yes.
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
That's why you're a Christian now.
Maybe. I think that's why I'm back I was really resistant because when I first met her, she made that clear, and I was like, I'm not teaching any of this shit to my kids. You know, you're gonna do this on your own. Like, I was like that when in the first year at least.
I'm sure.
So
Hey, I tell you, I left Christianity, and my wife still has. She's a Christian. We still have coitus, so don't worry about it.
No, I understand. No, but I legitimately, looking back, it wasn't that. That was just like a helper. It was more so the philosophy and like I was kind of like really attached to like a naturalistic view of all things, physicalist kind of view, and I see that that's just it's insufficient to me, and it's unsatisfying.
I get you. I understand. Like, there's no hope of an afterlife with atheism and naturalism. So I get you. Hey, I gotta let you go. I got some people who want in here. Take care.
Hey, thanks a lot.
Bye. Yep. Bye. Let's see here. Oh, this is a philosopher guy. Justin. Ex-Mormon. In 7 seconds, he'll realize he's on. Oh, now he does. Say something so I can hear you.
Hey, am I muted?
Nope, you're not muted.
Cool.
What do you want to talk about? You see how philosophy messes up people? You see that previous caller?
Yes. Yeah. And I'm kind of with you, Doug. I'm not going to say that philosophy is useless, but man, I don't have any interest in it. And I think people just get way too deep going and sniffing their own butts about it. Like, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But yeah, I one of the things that I wanted to talk about was why people do that, why that becomes such a big issue for people. And what I think it comes down to, I have a master's in psychology. I think it comes down to just finding post hoc reasons for why we do things, because that's how our brains work. One of the things that's kind of unintuitive about our behavior is we act first and then come up with reasons second. That's just how we're wired.
Heinemann, right? Is that who said that? Beliefs come first, reasons come second. Who said that?
I don't remember off the top of my head, but yes, that.
Yeah.
And even things like if you're walking in the woods and a bear comes out, you'd think you get scared and then you feel the adrenaline and your heart rate goes up and everything. No, it's the other way around. You get those physical responses first, and then your brain says, "Oh, I'm doing that. That means I'm scared." That's kind of what happens, or that's what the data suggests. We can't say for sure. And so I think, people wind up in these beliefs where they really, really care about stuff and it's meaningful to them. And then when pressed, they have to make up reasons and they latch onto whatever they can to just hold on to that. And this is exactly what I did when I was Mormon. And I was very, very Mormon. I was very pious.
So the best thing to do in that case then would be to try to alleviate the negative reasons to leave, right? So there's not that reason to defend it so desperately.
I think that's part of it, and I think that another thing to do is to address what is the actual thing here that's making this so important to you. And for some people, it's like identity. For some people, it's like tradition and culture. For some people, it's like what brings them, what makes them able to sleep at night. But that's the thing that you have
Or
to
meeting
get to,
a beautiful young woman.
Yes. I was waiting for that. I was just waiting. Beautiful.
Yeah, and what was funny about it is he didn't realize why I was laughing. It's like, it happens so often.
And Jim Bob, I don't mean to say any of this to be like denigrating. I really don't. I don't think I'm smarter than you. I don't think any of that. I just think that when you get caught up in, because this happened to me, when you get caught up in these type of things and they become personal to you, letting go of that becomes painful, like psychologically painful, because you have to admit, I was wrong. And I did all of these things that, cost me time and effort and money and everything else for bad reasons. And that's not something anyone wants to admit because it hurts. And so I think the route that some people go of saying like religious people are dumb or religious people are uneducated and religious people are stupid, which clearly many are not, kind of misses the point entirely.
Yeah.
And one of the things that's been interesting to me in my position, I latched onto the world of Christian apologetics a few years ago because Mormons don't really have it. Like seeing all of these things happen and just thinking, well, if I said this when I was still Mormon, you would completely reject what I was saying, even though we believe in Jesus, even though we believe in like not the Trinity, but Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, even though like I've read the Bible 2 different languages, even though all of this, suddenly as I put Mormon in front of any of this stuff, most of these people would reject any of the claims that I would make about the golden plates or about the ancient Lorella or about the revelations of Joseph Smith. And that, to me, was like a really good example of the outsider test of faith and how we become blind to what's close to us because we can't really understand a paradigm without that being.
Hey, Justin, I want to let you go because apparently there's a Christian who wants in here.
Of course.
Okay, but thanks. I agree with everything you said there. Take care.
You too.
I think this is the Christian. GB, are you a friend of Are you a friend of Jerome?
Yeah, how you know?
I'm doing well.
Yeah.
Thank you for taking your mask off so we can see your face. And
yeah, I think I appreciate it. Thanks for taking my call.
Are you in a restaurant right now?
I am. Do you think maybe that might be a problem? I mean, it seems quiet enough, but I can always call back another time.
No, that's not a problem, but I want you to do me a favor and just yell out as loud as you can, "Praise Jesus!"
Praise Jesus!
He did it.
I didn't hear an amen, so I don't know if there's any other Christians here.
Now you're gonna get kicked out. I didn't think you would do it. Okay.
Amen.
I'll leave it up to you. Do you want to ask me questions? Or do you want me to ask you questions?
We could do a little bit of both. One of the things that I really wanted to ask you is, if Jesus Christ was God, would you worship him? Like, would you be interested to spend eternity with him?
That's a great question. It depends on who Jesus is. So if you just said God, but that doesn't tell me what God is like. So for example, if God is the God that Tim Burnett, I played him earlier, believes in, that drowns babies, no. I wouldn't worship him.
That's the one I'm talking about, yeah. Okay.
No, but
cool.
if God, if God is the God that an apologist historian named Pete Enns worships, I think he is a universalist, and I think he discards most of the Old Testament stuff. And anyhow, yeah, maybe I still find it difficult to believe a creator God would even ask for worship. It's like you and me going for a walk together and we see army ants on the sidewalk and I stop and I say, no, GB, we can't continue on walking until these ants start worshiping us or me because I'm a man, you know? Like, how stupid is that? Like, and if your God is real, wouldn't he look at us as far as in terms of power and worthiness and goodness and love? Aren't we like those ants?
Sort of. One second. I am picking up a door that it just finished. I was waiting here for 20 minutes, so I thought I would have a long.
Okay.
No, 20 minutes is an exaggeration. But
you're probably right.
Well, the difference I would say is that God does interact with us. Like he feeds us, according to the Bible, right? He clothes us, he feeds us. So it's not like it's a dead end deal. He's interacting with us because he's the one that provides life. That's where my mind. Well, do you have any thoughts on
that? Yeah. I think you're flat out wrong in some cases. There's people who die of coldness. People die of heat. There's people who die of starvation. So does God feed those people?
He did until he didn't. That's what the Bible seems to be teaching.
He did until he didn't. That almost sounds like just crap happens to me. Are we agreed? Like, you can't say that God feeds people and then have people die of starvation. Right?
I think so. That seems to be the case because he's the one that holds our life together. So the moment that we die, I think it's fair to say he's the one that took it out.
See, I'm thirsty right now. God doesn't want me to be thirsty, does he? But this glass is empty. God, fill it. It's not filling. What's wrong? I thought he wants me, I guess he wants me to thirst after him, but he doesn't want me to thirst like physical thirst. So what's going on here?
I mean, the real question I have to ask is if water just filled up magically, would you even, like, would that be a good step in the right?
Yes.
Towards believing? Okay.
Amen. Hallelujah.
Okay.
Praise Jesus.
Amen.
Wouldn't you love to see that?
I would. Then I'm reminded, Jesus says, blessed are those who believe who haven't seen, right?
Yeah, that's not me. I'm like Thomas. I want to put my fingers in Jesus's holes. In fact, like, you just ordered a meal. God didn't provide that meal for you. The chefs in the back did. You had to pay money for it. You're paying right now, aren't you? You're going to ask for a straw and a napkin. God's not going.
Thank you.
God's not going to provide that. What's the lady's name across from you right now? She's the one providing you with the straws and the napkins, not God. And the money you made to pay for that, someone paid you that money. God's not in the minting press business. The best you can say is that God gave you life. But then again, your mom and dad had to make a choice to have coitus. So the best you can really do is that the universe exists, and that's because of God. And I'll give you that one if you want it.
Thanks, Doug. I didn't think it was going to be that easy.
Yeah, it's just that easy. That doesn't mean Christianity is true. Doesn't mean Islam is true. Doesn't mean any religion in the world is true. If you want to believe in a creator God, go for it. You have my blessing from the PineCreek Church.
Thank you so much, Doug. That was one of the many questions I have for you, and I would love to come back when I'm not busy. I didn't know how long it was going to be.
Yeah, it's my fault. I apologize. And I do not mind if you eat during this, but I do want to ask you, you're a Christian, right?
Yes.
The other caller said he was a Christian. I asked him why he believes, and he really, really struggled, in my opinion. Can I ask you the same question? Why? Most Christians believe that Christianity is about a man named Jesus being God incarnate, dying for the sins of the world, and then rising the third day. Do you believe that as well?
Yes.
Can I ask why you believe that?
Well, I choose to trust it. Based off the experiences that I've had in my life, I believe that God has answered prayers. He's given me a new spirit, and my mom has called me.
Oh, put her on. We can talk together, all three of us. Take your call. Have a great day.
Right,
take your call and eat.
Lord willing, won't be the last time.
Okay. All the best.
Later, Doug.
I do appreciate him more because he went straight to personal experience. No philosophy, no historicity of the ancient narratives. Something today, something now. Amen. Hallelujah. I just have higher standards. I want my glass filled with water. Three-way with mom. Oh my goodness. The room's open for more Christian. Oh, hang on. I've talked to David before, and I've never really... You there, David?
Echo.
We've never had a productive conversation, David, you and me.
Oh, right, because we kept it very open-ended, and probably that's I realized the reason why I called today is because I wanted to just answer one question that you kind of raised that other Christians didn't answer to my satisfaction, which was, why was Jesus raised from the dead? And people answered, well, because Jesus is God, and Jesus is God, but that's not the reason why he was raised from the dead. He was raised from the dead because God accepted his sacrifice as atonement and is sufficient sacrifice for the sins of all mankind, future, past, and present.
Yeah, I think a lot of Christians would agree with you on that. But the real question I'm asking is, why do you believe that a man 2,000 years ago rose from the dead? Why do you believe that's true? Now, you're saying if it is true, this explains why it's true, but I'm asking the step back. Why do you believe it actually happened in the past?
Yes, it is necessary that Jesus was resurrected. Otherwise, the entire faith is completely pointless.
Okay, but why do you believe it happened in the past?
So I believe it by faith. And in other words, I believe it through both the testimony and also through faith. I don't know how to kind of put those together.
And by faith, you mean the same thing the other guy meant? Trust.
Right. And actually, I did want to say that I really liked your answer about how you clarified what faith was, because faith is essentially the same thing as the way atheists think about trust, or any person does. You trust the food that someone else prepared for you, that they didn't poison.
Yeah, I understand. We don't have to go into detail. Why do you trust? Who do you trust that the narrative that Jesus rose from the dead is true?
Who do I trust the narrative that? Sorry, could you rephrase that?
How do you know that Jesus Christ rose from the dead? Where did it first come up? Who told you?
I just kind of know about Christianity, right? I was an atheist for...
Yeah, but some person told you, right?
No, actually, I did go to church as a kid, and I just kind of heard about, I kind of knew about, something about Jesus and
Okay, let me be more specific. It says in 1 Corinthians 15 that Jesus appeared in front of 500, in front of Peter, in front of the disciples, and finally to Paul. Do you believe that? Do you trust that that's true?
Yes.
Why?
Breathed and inspired.
Say again?
But I know that's not satisfactory for you.
No, I didn't hear you. You said, I heard because you believe it's inspired? Is that what you
I
said?
believe that the Bible, I do believe the Bible is infallible and true.
Okay, why do you believe that?
I know that's not sufficient for you, and that's the second point I guess we can talk about, which is that you talk about the water-soaked napkin, and it's related.
Hang on. Why do you believe the Bible is the inspired word of God?
Because it is evidently true. Everything it says, when I read it, it strikes a chord that resounds in a...
It strikes a chord when you read it?
Yeah.
Okay, when Muslims read the Quran, it strikes a chord with them, I'm sure. Does that mean the Quran is the word of God?
That's necessary, but it's not sufficient.
Is the Quran the word of God if a Muslim says it strikes a chord with them when they read it?
For a belief to be
Is the Quran the word of God when a Muslim says that it strikes a chord with them and when they read it? So therefore,
no, because it's not sufficient.
No,
it's not as sufficient.
Okay, so your answer was no.
Right.
When I asked you why you believe the Bible is the word of God, you said because when you read it, it strikes a chord with you. Is that a good reason to think the Bible is the word of God?
Just because something strikes a chord with you doesn't mean that alone is sufficient.
Okay, on its own, it's not a good reason. On its own.
No. Oh, no. That's incorrect. It's necessary, but it's not sufficient.
Can you believe that the Bible is the word of God and it not strike a chord in you? Aren't there people who believe that Christianity is true and still reject it?
I don't think you can believe that Jesus Christ rose from... No one today has ever witnessed a human being come back from the dead.
You got to read Craig Keener's book.
Right. It's basically, it's by any, if we were to just use scientific method and testability, you would say that is a unbelievable statement. So I don't think...
Okay, we're getting off the path. We're talking about why you believe Jesus Christ rose from the dead, and you said because you believe the Bible is true, inspired word of God. Then I asked you why you believe the Bible is the inspired word of God. You said because when you read it, it strikes a chord with you, and then you admitted that that alone is not a sufficient reason. So
Right. I just gave one reason, right?
okay, give me another reason then why you believe. If it's not, how did you get to actually believing the Bible is the inspired word of God? What's another reason?
That I believe that our souls are eternal, and that the Bible is the one book which does claim that our souls are basically that Adam and Eve were imbued with basically ensouled human beings.
The Book of Mormon believes that bodies are imbued with souls. Does that mean the Book of Mormon is the Word of God, inspired Word of God?
Well, if they contain things that are like, snippets or like excerpts from the Bible, then I don't know. I haven't read the Book of Mormon, but it's the point is that I do believe.
Do you believe there's any book other than the Bible that's the Word of God?
That I don't know about. I mean, I think everything is. I think. Yeah, I don't know about that.
Okay, fair enough. But my point is,
sorry. By the way, Pine, I just wanted to limit myself because I know that in previous conversations we do go on, and I just kind of wanted to clarify for every atheist and Christian out there that it is my opinion and belief that Jesus rose from the dead only because God accepted the sacrifice. And that sacrifice was for redemption of all of mankind's sins. And
okay.
But also one more thing, which was that back to the water-soaked napkin lighting on fire.
Yep.
First Corinthians 1 says that for after that, in the wisdom of God, the world by wisdom knew not God, but it pleased God. It pleased God by the foolishness of preaching to save them that believe, and that for the Jews required a sign, and the Greeks seeked after wisdom. But we preach a Christ crucified, and to the Jews it's a stumbling block, and unto the Greeks it's considered foolishness.
So you're saying asking for a sign is bad?
It's not bad, but they require it, right? So like First Corinthians is saying that Jews required a sign.
Okay.
They needed a physical demonstration, just like you're talking about the napkin.
Okay. And what's wrong with that?
I don't think anything's wrong with that. I think we do want that, right? But the point is that Christians, they just preach Christ, and that Christ alone is kind of just I think it's
you just believe because you believe, David. I think that. I don't think you even know why you believe. I really don't think you even know why you believe. You just believe. Maybe it has to do with that beautiful young lady next to you in the picture. I don't know.
You know what? She's actually not a Christian.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Is that your girlfriend?
Yeah. We've been together for 7 years.
Why doesn't she believe?
She has a feeling that like it was, she never thinks about this stuff. Like it's not really a concern of hers. And so she's kind of just.
Okay. Can you pretend to be her for a second?
Yeah.
What's her name?
Her name is Ying.
Ying? So Ying, why does David believe that Christianity is true? What would Ying say?
I don't know. He really cares about it, and he makes signs, and he preaches on street corners, and but I do trust him. But I don't.
Ying, why do you think David cares so much and does make signs and do all these things? What is the impetus behind his caring so much? Ying.
Well,
you're Ying.
He really cares for everyone, but I don't know how that relates exactly. But I just know that it's related to his caring.
But Ying, David could care about people by doing other stuff, like just being a good friend or maybe going to a soup kitchen and whatever. But why does Ying care about other people believing that Christianity is true? What do you think, Ying?
I don't know. I just know that he talks a lot about like doing things for those who don't have any merit or deserve anything, yeah. But beyond that, like I still don't know. So that's because she asks me all the time, like,
No. You're Ying. You're Ying. So Ying, okay, so you're just saying that you're not sure why David believes or is so caring and wants people to believe this. And Ying, does David actually believe a man 2,000 years ago rose from the dead?
Oh yes, he talks about it all the time.
Ying, how long has David been a Christian?
Before I knew him.
Okay. And has he ever told you, Ying, why he became a Christian?
I never asked him.
Okay. Is Ying scared about the afterlife, Ying? Is David scared about the afterlife, Ying?
He might be.
Does he talk about hell a lot, Ying?
Sometimes. Sometimes he asks me to listen to testimonies of people who experienced visions of hell, and why it makes sense. But to me, I don't know.
Ying, is David scared that you're going to go to hell?
I don't know. That's what you would say. I would guess. But I think that, so I'm going to talk as myself now. We recently had a family member pass away. It was her mother, and it was, whether, I told her that, like, I was thinking about how would I feel when my own parents pass, because that's going to happen for everyone. I feel that because the soul is eternal, you can be rest assured that if they place their that God has a way so that we can be all together, essentially, like forever in eternity, and
okay.
That's beautiful, and that's, well, I'm sorry, that's not the reason for this. It's the point is that that in your heart, when you see death, you just see that it's wrong, and that like when you see an animal that was hit by a car on the road, you instinctively know in your heart there's something horribly wrong, and when you see like a dead person in the casket, it's just there's a difference between the way the world is.
You've watched The Lion King. It's the circle of life, David.
Right. That's biology, and I'm an evolutionist. So was Francis Crick, the inventor of founder of DNA.
Hey, you frustrate me, David, because you talk very slowly, and it's very frustrating for me. And then I'm not even sure if there's after, like, sometimes I can be patient with people who talk slowly because they end up having a really good point. I'm not hearing good points from you.
Okay. Well, I apologize for that.
So I don't know what to do with you. Like, you want me to be a Christian. I reject the core propositions of Christianity.
But you reject it because of you basically need a sign, right?
No, a sign would help me get on the right track. But I reject the historical narrative too. I mean, it's
right.
To me,
the quality of the testimony is insufficient for you.
Yes, the evidence doesn't match the claim.
That it is that it is compelling and it's credible, and that I think if you wanted to find additional evidence, and I've mentioned this before, but to actually compile like where the evidence is about the lack of credibility, as opposed to.
Do you think I'm lacking knowledge about Christianity?
I think you have a good knowledge about Christianity.
Do you think my knowledge about Christianity is better than yours, or worse, or about the same?
I don't know precisely. It's kind of like in a ballpark of like, I think everyone's kind of like on a certain level of like good familiarity.
I've been doing this for a lot of years, and I am almost never surprised by anything a Christian says. And so I just reject reading a text, even listening to traditions, and saying this is even close to being sufficient.
But you only reject it because it's scientifically not possible.
No, I reject it for the same reason you reject things. If you and I were walking down the street and we saw someone seized up and going through a seizure and frothing at the mouth, I would say, and we have, let's say, two things explain it. An epileptic seizure or being filled with demons. I would say epileptic seizure. What would you say out of those two? They both explain the data.
Yeah, I would say epileptic seizure, because that's most likely going to be the case.
Okay, now go through the historicity of the New Testament with that in your head and ask yourself, what is more likely, that Jesus appeared to 500 in bodily form, or that some people, whether it was 500 or not, just had some type of impression of Jesus, like at a Pentecostal church?
Mm-hmm.
Which more likely, David?
Sure, it's unlikely. And I want to say that have you also considered the evidence for it, right? Have you actually legitimately gone through and be like, okay, what is, right? Sort of like the Lee Strobel Case for Christ thing, right?
Oh my goodness, Lee Strobel's Case for Christ is absolutely horrible. It's horrendous. Because it all boils down to the stuff I'm talking about. It starts with Paul. He's the only guy who claims to have seen Jesus. Did you know that? The only guy. The rest is third-party hearsay. I know Christians don't want to believe this, but it's true. All you have to do is look at the Gospel of Mark, look at the Gospel of Matthew, Luke, and John, and ask yourself, anywhere in there does it say, I, Matthew, saw Jesus rise from the dead? No. You can't even find Luke's name in the Gospel of Luke. It's not in it.
Mm-hmm.
Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that.
And so what you have here is you have a situation where a guy in the 4th century named Eusebius says that a guy named Papias, who we don't have any writings for, says a guy named John, which we're not sure which John this is, says a guy named Mark, says that a guy named Peter says that Jesus said things. And then they use the Old Testament and some stories that they heard orally to create a new narrative called the Gospel of Mark. If you think for 1 second this is sufficient to believing a man walked on water, multiplied loaves and fishes, and rose from the dead, I don't know what to say. It's not sufficient.
You know what? I felt just like, okay, look, I saw back in 2003, I saw my friend asked me to come with him to see Timothy Keller give a sermon at UC Berkeley. And I saw him and I said, I was so annoyed because I thought I was going to get evidence for Christ and there was no evidence, and he just talked about in circles and it didn't seem to make any sense.
Okay.
And I was I needed video camera evidence, right? That's what it would take.
What changed? Why but now you believe it without videotape evidence?
Because I knew things that were not learned or without.
What new information did you get?
That evidence. That I have this soul that's okay, you don't accept it, right? But
no. It's not that I don't accept the concept of a soul, but I'm saying this has nothing to do with whether a man rose from the dead 2,000 years ago. It could be true we have souls and Jesus not rise from the dead 2,000 years ago.
Right.
What you're doing is you're taking these things that you either desire to be true or think is true, and you're importing it into a worldview that helps explain it. But Muslims believe in souls, Jews believe in souls, Mormons believe in souls. So don't mention souls anymore, because it has nothing to do with whether a man rose from the dead in bodily form 2,000 years ago. The only thing you can really go by is the historical narrative or some type of experience today. Like if Jesus came back today.
Right. So look, I would just say that the bottom line is that, right, it comes down to faith. That if you believe that he died and was resurrected. He died for your sins and was resurrected, so that we would have eternal life without merit on nothing that we did. If you trust in that, then that's what Christians believe in.
Yeah, and if you trust that a man named Muhammad got the very words of Allah in a cave, and then over the course of 23 years, then Islam is true. And if you trust that Jesus appeared to Joseph Smith in the 18th century or 19th century and gave him the real gospel, then Mormonism is true. You're saying nothing really significant or important, or you're just stating, I just believe because I believe. That's what you're doing. You believe because you believe.
So, but then why do you trust in, for instance, like food you didn't prepare, like when you go to a restaurant?
Because of the FDA.
Sure, but
and sometimes I do get food poisoning, and I don't go back.
You know, when I went to Acapulco Cancun, I ordered steak, and then I immediately got food poisoning. And my
that's because it's in Mexico.
Yeah, but it was in the touristy area, right? And it was like, and you know, it looked really good, and I saw other people kind of leave, and I'm like, well, there's kind of evidence that it looks clean enough, and that, like, you know, it kind of seems like not a shady establishment.
Okay, I get where you're going with this. You're saying that you have to place your faith and trust in something at some time, and and in the case with this food, your faith was misplaced, right? Because you got food poisoning. You trusted that this food was good, and it wasn't, right?
Yeah.
What would convince you, or what would show you that your faith in Jesus was misplaced? For the food, it's you throwing up. What is it for Jesus?
That's a thought experiment, but I would.
How would you know you're wrong?
How would I know that I'm wrong?
Yeah.
How would I know that I'm wrong? I don't know how I know what I would wrong. I don't. I think about the examples, like, you know, misbehaving Christians, misbehaving pastors, but that's all the time.
Yeah. There's hypocrites in every religion. How would you know if you were wrong and that Jesus Christ never rose from the dead?
Right. Like if I saw a sign, right,
Here's an idea for you. Mm-hmm. You might know if you're wrong if you actually consider that you don't have good reasons to believe it's true in the first place.
But I'm not basing my reasons on scientific testability.
I'm talking about the historical method right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, even the historical method, I do believe that the evidence is credible. Like, in other words, the quality of the testimony. And I know we've had that discussion before, and you didn't like it, but I would.
True or false? We have eyewitness accounts of Jesus, meaning they wrote in the first person that they saw the resurrected Jesus. True or false?
True.
Who?
Paul and Peter.
Peter's never said that he saw the risen Jesus. Did you know that? Where Peter writes himself and says, I saw the risen Jesus. If you read 1 Peter, it says that he is witness to Jesus' suffering and death, but not his resurrection. Read 1 Peter. I did about a year ago to confirm it. Peter never claims to have seen the resurrected Jesus with his own hand. Mm-hmm. It says that in Mark.
Only because of Paul. Oh, sorry. Let me continue. Yeah, you said Mark.
You only have Paul's letters.
Uh-huh.
And guess what? Jesus had already died and ascended according to Acts. So you think, is it your position that Jesus died, rose again, went up to heaven, and came back down just for Paul?
It was recorded, right, in the Gospels that he was witnessed by multitudes, right?
Okay, listen very carefully. I'm talking about first-hand account, eyewitness account, meaning I saw this.
Mm-hmm.
The Gospels are not that.
Because you're saying only Paul had that was the only author who.
Paul is the only author who actually comes out and says, I saw Jesus. Jesus appeared to me.
Okay. I'll grant you that for now, and I'll research that myself just to verify it. But and I appreciate
this shouldn't be a shock to you. Like the fact that you listen to guys like Lee Strobel and Tim Keller or whatever and other apologists, and the fact that I even have to say this to you is shocking to me. Like, this should be, yeah, Doug, you're right. We don't have any firsthand accounts, people writing in the first person saying that they personally saw the resurrected Jesus other than Paul. It's a shock to me that I even have to say that to you. You should know this if you care about Christianity, if you care about what you believe is true. Right?
Sure. Like, look, there's no limitations on like the knowledge quotient for the gospel. Like, in other words, you don't have to be a biblical scholar to receive it, or yeah. Like,
my advice is you
secondarily important.
don't. You talked about faith earlier. My advice is don't place your faith in Lee Strobel. Do not place your faith in Tim Keller. Do not place your faith in Gary Habermas.
No,
do not place your faith in any of these apologists, because they're apologists.
I appreciate that. No, I do.
Read the text for yourself, and you'll see, when you read the Gospels, you'll see no firsthand accounts. Even in the Gospel of John, they say, well, yeah, at the end in chapter 21 or 19.
Sure. By the way,
it's third person.
Andrew, do you have an email address that you could share with me? Because that way I can.
No, you're the type of guy I do not want to email correspond with, because I know your emails will be worse than the audio talking.
No, at least it won't take your time. You just scan through it and be like, okay.
No, I'm not going to scan through your emails, because it's going to be if I do respond to you only once, it's like a cat coming back for scraps. It's going to go on for weeks and months. No, I've been there. I've done that. No.
You know, Doug, I don't know what to say. I can't tell you how opposed I was to Christianity before. Like, I was
don't give me that sob story. I was an atheist. I rebelled against God, and
I thought they were hurting. I thought they were all George Bush supporting people that were like in favor of like the Iraq War, and that they didn't think about anything about the Iraqi children, and then they accepted all this stuff without evidence. That was my bottom line, and it was unacceptable, and they were distorting science, and they were.
And then your cat died, and you came to Jesus.
Sure. Yeah.
Right.
Sure. It like there's I don't know how things happen, but things happen, and I'm just telling you that you cannot predict this. Like, when this, I loved Steven Pinker, and I did kind of like Sam Harris, but like
I don't care.
Okay. But anyways. Well, thanks for having me back on, Doug.
Yeah, just you know what? You don't need to call back, because this is our third call, and I
wanted to answer the question about why Jesus was raised from the dead question.
Yeah, that's the atonement theory. Yeah,
No, well, the acceptance. Yeah, sure. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'm aware of all the atonement theories, so it's all right. Take care.
Okay, thank you.
It's like someone took the dopamine out of me. Agabu, you're on. Close your tab. I'll wait. There you go.
All right.
Help me, Agabu. I'm having a rough day now.
It's okay, you know. People can believe things and have a tough time articulating why they believe what they believe. Yeah?
Oh, I can tell you're not a believer then, right? Are you Christian?
Unfortunately for you, I sure am.
You are Christian?
Absolutely, my good man.
Ooh. Do you want me to be a Christian?
I sure do. You ought to be a child of God. Jesus Christ is King of Kings and Lord of Lords, and you ought to bend the knee to him and serve him with all your heart.
I should.
Yes, you should.
Why?
He is king.
So what?
Eh?
So what?
So what? He is king.
So what?
He owns you.
He owns me?
Yes, he does. You belong to him, my good man.
Okay, so if he owns me, what does that mean?
It means you are his property. That's what that means.
I'm a slave?
No, I didn't say slave. I said you're his property.
Right. A slave is the property of an owner. You're saying God owns me.
No. So you own your table. Is it your slave?
Well, it's an inanimate object. I'm a sentient being.
It is an owner, but it's still your property.
My dog's my property, and it's my slave.
Is it your slave?
Yeah, it gets my shoes, and it gets my ball.
You don't mean that, and you know it.
Anyhow, I'm just joking around with you. So, why do you believe any of what you're saying is true?
Why do I believe any of it is true?
Yeah.
Okay, the previous caller, you'd asked him about why do you think, why do you believe that a man 2,000 years ago rose from the dead?
Yeah.
To me, the basic answer to that is, well, because there's well-documented evidence that he did rise from the dead.
Finally, we get a straight answer. Thank you. Now, the question is, let's dive a little deeper. Which documents are you talking about?
The New Testament canon. The whole 28 to 37 books of the New Testament. Yeah.
I love you, Agabu, because you give me straight answers to straight questions. Okay, let's get even a little deeper than that. Which is the earliest stuff that we should talk about?
The earliest stuff, which are what, in the New Testament canon?
Yeah.
The earliest stuff, it's really difficult to pin down what could be the earliest stuff, but I always go for the 4 gospel accounts first.
Oh, and I know, but they're not the earliest. I want to go chronological order.
Says who?
Me.
Says who?
I want to go chronologically because that's the order they came in history.
No, you haven't told me anything there. You're saying they're not the earliest. But I'm sorry, but there's nothing about what you've said here that says that they're not the earliest. That's just you saying.
What? What? Now you're disappointing me. Are you telling me that the Gospel of Mark came before, let's say, Paul's letter to the Thessalonians?
Most likely.
No, you didn't go there.
Can you point at anything in the Gospel of Mark, since you brought it up, that suggests that it was written after Thessalonians? Anything. It's a 16 chapters.
Okay, you might be right.
Point at something in the book that says, there's this detail in the book that suggests it was written after first.
You are good, Agabu. You are good. So I'm going to have to concede that point. And so let's start with which gospel?
Okay, which gospel? Okay, it's reading the gospels, and I read them all the time. For me, I don't care about what somebody says, like, these were probably written at this stage. Like, no. What details in the works themselves tell you that?
Pick a gospel and we'll talk about it.
Yeah, pick any gospel. Like pick any gospel. To me, the details of all the gospels, based on the information they give us, suggest that were written fairly early.
So if you don't want to pick one, I'll pick one. Let's talk about the Gospel of Mark. Is that okay?
Okay, let's go with that.
Who wrote it?
Who wrote the Gospel of Mark?
Yeah.
The name, most likely the name that bears by whom it's born, Mark. There's a reason why we call it Mark.
Okay.
That came from somewhere.
Where did it come from?
It came from the early testimony of people who received this wisdom, and it's not even that they titled the book, this is the book of Mark or whatever. This was a common knowledge from early in the 2nd century. The reason why it has that name.
Whoa, 2nd century?
Early 2nd century.
Okay.
Okay, is the first time that it's ever called Mark. I'm not saying that's when it was written. I'm saying that's when we have information telling us that people were already subscribing.
Okay. Let's assume that's true, that a guy named Mark wrote the Gospel of Mark. True or false?
Okay.
The Gospel of Mark contains, because you talked about, we got to look at what's actually in it.
Yeah.
True or false? The Gospel of Mark contains that Mark identifies himself as the author of the Gospel of Mark.
True that Mark identifies himself as the author. There is no There is no such identification in the book, but
Okay.
that's irrelevant.
Okay, hang on, but no, it's not irrelevant because we want to talk. We want to look about the details contained
Yeah.
within the gospel. So you just admitted to me that the Gospel of Mark does not say that Mark wrote the Gospel of Mark, correct?
Explicitly doesn't. Yeah, no.
So not only do you put trust in what the second century people say about Mark?
Yeah, because they're very close to the time it was written, so they would know.
Okay.
Okay. You telling me in the 21st century that you don't think so is less credible than a person living in the 2nd century, because they're in very close proximity to that time. So they're more trustworthy than you are.
Okay. So now we have the Gospel of Mark. 2nd century people say it was written by a guy named Mark. Where did Mark get his information from?
Oh, well, Mark got his information from the people whose names he mentions throughout the Gospels, and the primary sources of information for the Gospel of Mark. If you look at the Gospel itself and as to how Mark is unfolding the work, okay, it's the 12 apostles that he mentions by name.
Okay, hang on. So you're saying he got his information from the people he mentioned. Does Mark?
Yeah,
does
primarily.
Mark?
Does the 12
I gotcha.
Yeah, like in Mark 3.
Does Mark?
Mark,
hang on. Does Mark actually say that he got information from these people?
Yes, but that is how he indexes it. The moment he mentions a name, like for instance, like I'm saying in Mark chapter 3, he says these are the 12 he chose: Simon, who he named Peter. James,
No, that's not what I'm asking. I'm asking, does Mark say? Does Mark? Like, do we read anything in the Gospel of Mark that says, I, Mark, know these things because so-and-so told me? Something like that.
He does it in the body of the narrative. That's what I'm getting at.
But does he ever use the first person saying, I got my info? He
doesn't have to, because the book isn't about him.
No, you don't say he doesn't have to. You say, no, Doug, he doesn't. That's how you answer.
Yeah,
You started off answering my questions very directly, and I was applauding you. So nowhere in the Gospel of Mark does he actually say, I, Mark, am writing these things, correct? And nowhere in the book does he say, my sources are this, so-and-so, correct?
In those words, in those particular phraseology, no, not in the way you want him to there. But the point,
not in any way like that. It's not. There's nothing even close to him saying stuff like that.
What? Of course there is. This is what I'm explaining. I'm just telling you that here's Mark 3. Okay? You
Mark
don't
3.
get to. Yeah, Mark 3 from 16 says, these are the 12 he chose. Okay? Notice this is somebody telling you, okay, what's going on here. These are the 12 he chose: Simon, whom he named Peter, James and John, the sons of Zebedee.
Yeah. Well, you don't have to read it out. We know it. So
but Jesus, and then and so on and so forth. My point there is, this is Mark indexing his work, giving you a list of...
No. You got to be clear. Yes. You got to be clear. This is Eusebius saying that, Papias saying that, John says that Mark says this is his list.
I am reading Mark. I'm not quoting Eusebius here. I'm reading.
No. Whenever you say this is Mark saying, you got to be technically correct. This is people in the 2nd century saying this is what Mark is saying.
No, it isn't. This is it. This is the work itself that is attributed to Mark saying it. Okay,
very good. Don't say Mark said it. Say this is what's attributed to Mark saying it. Okay.
This is whatever you want to say. Okay, there's no one else this work is attributed to but Mark. No one else. In the 2nd, 3rd, whatever century you want to pick, the book is never attributed to anyone else.
Okay, that's fine. I'm just pointing out the obvious, that it doesn't say that Mark wrote it within the text. Okay, it doesn't say cite the sources within the text.
Yeah, there are no other competing authors for the work. That's the bottom line. In fact, there's even no claim in the early centuries of the book being anonymous, or we don't know who wrote it or whatever. No. Singular attribution, Mark. That's the only name that ever comes up, ever.
Okay, so now I think is it in chapter 5 that it's reported that Jesus saw a demon-possessed man, and then he commanded for the demons to come out, and they went into a herd of pigs.
Yeah.
Do you believe that actually happened in history?
Given it's written in a gospel narrative that is giving this information in a historical narrative, yes, I do.
Why do you have all those caveats? Like, why not just?
It's not a caveat. It's just the way it is.
So if it was written in a non-gospel, in a non-Bible, then you wouldn't believe it?
No, that's not what I said. I said it's written in an account that is historically inclined. That's why I believe it.
Okay, now is everything you read from 2,000 years ago history?
Like what?
Is everything in the Gospel of Mark history?
What? Is everything in the Gospel of Mark history? Yes, it's a historical narrative.
How did you come to the conclusion it's a historical narrative?
Because it's axiomatic to the work. It's time references, places, and
whoa. There's fairy tales that mention real people, real places. That doesn't make them history.
And give me an example of anything that's classified a fairy tale in the Gospel of Mark. What is that?
I'm asking you a very simple question. Just because a text mentions real people and real places doesn't mean that the text itself is history. Do you agree or disagree?
That depends on who wrote it and why.
Well, let's say the text doesn't say who wrote it, and let's say the text itself doesn't say where the information comes from. All we see is a text in front of us, and it mentions, let's say, a man taking demons out of another man and putting it into pigs. Would you say that text is history?
Okay. Of course I would, if the claim is suggesting that this is something that happened. Okay, I don't have to believe it, but if the text claims this is what I witnessed, it's trying to pass itself as a historical. Why?
Okay, that's great. So
history is anything that happened. It's somebody simply saying, "Oh, this happened."
Is every claim made in a text, an ancient text, does it represent history? That things that actually happened in the past?
In a sense, yes, it does.
Okay, so when the Muslims say that the text claims certain things, that the Quran was written by God, then that means it is historical?
Yeah, there is a historical element to it, yes. And keep in mind, I'm not even saying that it's true or not, but the claim itself is historical.
Okay. I'm not, see, we're miscommunicating. I'm not talking about the claim. I'm talking about it actually. If you and I had a time machine and went back into history, had a video camera, would we see a man would we see a man approach another man and then demons fly into pigs and the pigs go off the cliff? Do you think we could videotape that?
Could you do that? Because you asked me, like, is it a historical claim? You bring up the Muslims. Muslims make historical claims. That's all there is to it. Okay, you know what I'm getting at here is the claims are historical. Now, how can we verify whether they are credible? Now you're talking about credibility. You're like, oh, there's historicity, and then let's move to finding out whether it's credible. They claim that this.
Do you believe the Gospel of Mark is credible?
Of course I do. Yes,
why?
Absolutely.
Why?
Because there's absolutely nothing within it that is beyond credibility.
Okay, hang on. Let's let that sink in. There's nothing in it that's beyond credibility. I believe it says in the Gospel of Mark that Jesus walked on water. That's a claim.
Yes.
You're never going to believe me, but I have a pool in my backyard, and yesterday I did the same. I walked on water. That's a claim. Do you believe it?
Do I believe it? I have no reason to believe it, because why are you telling me that? What's the point?
The point is, I walked on water, and I want you to know it.
Well, so you say.
So I say?
Yeah.
So you don't believe it?
I have no reason to believe it.
What would be a reason to believe it?
Okay? I have more reason to believe that Jesus walked on water than you walking on water.
What, you do?
Yep.
What? What do you have?
What do I have? Because the story of Jesus walking on water has actual people there.
I had actual people here.
Who are mentioned by name.
They are mentioned. I can mention names.
Yeah, of course. You can now make up names since I brought that up.
Well, the
since
Bible.
You're making up the story as you go.
Mark can make up names since you brought it up.
No. You making up. There's no reason. Keep in mind, there is absolutely no reason for me to believe that you walked on water. None. But I have more reason to believe Mark's account of Jesus walking on water gives me more reasons to trust it than you.
Like what?
Like I said, let's look at the story itself. Who's there? Mark mentions the context, when it happened, how it happened, who was there when it happened, and what happened after
yesterday Myron saw it, and John saw it, and Nikki saw it. You don't believe me?
You're making it up as you go along. There's absolutely no reason for me to trust you.
Do I need to write it down and then you'll believe it?
You can write it down all you want. It has no context, no cultural milieu, no historical, no real sense of historical awareness. Nothing.
In what context would you believe I walked on water?
Okay. In what context? Well, first, there's not your life isn't indexed by a cumulative case of things that brought it, because we're talking about Jesus. Okay, it's not like Jesus walking on water happens in a vacuum.
We're talking about PineCreek here.
Yes, we are, and PineCreek is a nobody. He's not Jesus. He hasn't divided.
I am not a nobody.
You are a nobody. Jesus
I am special.
Okay, we're talking about a man who has literally defined history in ways in which you haven't.
Well, in 2,000 years, I will define history.
You can see,
just give me time. Just give me time.
We'll give you time. I'm sure people will be talking about how Doug PineCreek is Lord and Savior.
2,000 years ago, followers of PineCreekism will say, "But we got it written down. Myron was there, Nikki was there, John was there."
Keep in mind that we're talking about the first.
How dare you doubt that I walked on water? That's what they're going to say 2,000 years from now. Agabu, you got nothing other than a text of claims.
No, I do not. You have no standing to criticize. You actually have none.
I am alive. I'm talking to you.
I'm amazed that you believe your own nonsense. Like, really?
I'm amazed you believe in the nonsense found in the Gospel of Mark.
No, it is nonsense. You asked me about Jesus walking on water. What about my answers was inadequate?
That you believe it because some guys or some names are mentioned in a book?
Yes, because that's how we operate in life. We believe people.
What? You believe people? That's your first problem.
No. You believe people, especially when you know they have no reason to lie to you, especially when even you right now.
No reason to lie?
No. You move through life with I want to say, if somebody comes to you, let's say one of your good friends came to you one fine day, okay? Yeah. And says, "Oh, Doug, dude, I know this is going to sound strange, but I was out and about walking on a hike.
Yeah.
Okay. Now as I was walking there, okay, I heard a rustling in the bushes there, and I was like, "Oh, what the hell is that?" It completely startled me.
What the what?
Like, it completely startled me, And as I was standing there, just in front of me, the bushes moved, and guess what came out?
What?
A unicorn.
Yeah.
Okay, your friend tells you that, and they're serious. They're not trying to kid with you. It's like, "Look, I was just out. This thing appeared in front of me. It was right there." And they tell you, "I saw this thing." Are you telling me, in all good conscience, your friend tells you this is what they saw? Yeah. You're going to disbelieve them?
Yes, I'm going to disbelieve them.
Why?
Because humans are fallible. We see things that are not real. we are horrible at figuring out what's true or not, and this is why.
That does not change the fact that he saw it and he told you this, and it went out on a limb because you're his friend. He said, "Look, guys,
I don't care if he's my friend or not. I'm not going to believe he actually saw a unicorn."
Then in that story, you're the idiot.
I'm the idiot for disbelieving in a unicorn because my friend said so.
And you know why you're the idiot?
Why?
Because you didn't believe your friend who went out on a limb at the pain of sounding like an idiot to tell you this is what I saw, and you failed to believe a friend whom you've known, okay, whom has no reason to even tell you this story, but they came out to you and said, "Look, this happened."
Agabu, I'm going to tell you the truth. I'll take it a step further. If my own wife, who I love dearly and known most of my life, or if she came up to me and said that she saw a person who we both know has been dead for years come talk to her on the street corner, I would not believe my wife.
Why?
Do I really have to answer that question?
Yeah, why? She tells you, she doesn't, keep in mind, she doesn't have to.
Because there's other explanations than the one that is so bizarre and weird.
Like what?
She could be under some type of mental state that's causing her to see things that are not real.
Really? Because there's just something wrong with her seeing somebody. She tells you, "This is who I saw."
No, someone who's been dead for a year, I said.
Yeah.
Now,
And she saw them.
let me ask you, would you believe your wife or your friend?
Yep.
That's a horrible epistemology.
No, it's not a horrible epistemology. That is how responsible people treat their friends.
No, listen to me carefully. There is something wrong with you if you believe that.
No.
You're going to lose a ton of money in your life.
I am not talking about you believing somebody you don't know giving you stories about UFOs on TV. Like, "Oh, I saw a UFO," whatever. No. We're talking about someone in your life here who has no personal stake or even a reason to tell you this story.
You're going to lose a ton of money in your life.
Okay?
Because you are so gullible. If this is your epistemology that you just trust, like, let me be clear. Maybe we're misunderstanding each other. Maybe we're talking past each other. When you say you would believe your wife, are you saying that you would believe that your wife actually saw someone who's been dead for a year?
Why not? They say they saw him.
Or are you saying that you would believe that she saw something that might be not someone who's been dead for a year?
Sure, I can try to give you stupid rationalizations like you're trying to, like, "Oh, they probably delusional and whatever." Like, yeah, those are rational.
Okay.
We have a word for that.
Those
are rationalizations.
That's what I thought you said. So I think we're at a stalemate, because if you believe highly improbable acts like that on the basis of they're my friend,
and they say they saw. Keep in mind that they are an eyewitness. They're not saying somebody told me. They're saying I saw it.
Yeah, I mean we're stuck. We're so different, Agabu. Like,
really?
Yeah.
Okay. Because courtrooms rely on people simply saying that I was there, I saw it.
Oh, really? So if someone comes into a courtroom and they say I saw it, let's say
I saw this man and this man doing such a thing and such a thing.
Let's say there's a murder trial and someone comes in as a witness and says, "I saw so and so murder another person."
And the lawyer will interrogate that person to find out whether their story is credible.
Now hang on. Now we're on the same page. You just don't believe it at face value. You interrogate to see if the lighting was good, if they were drinking that day, right? Oh, that's just stupid rationalizations you said to me earlier.
No, what I called rational is you just simply dismissing the person and saying, "I don't believe you." That is
are you worried about people's feelings? Is this what it's about?
This isn't about feelings. This is about the fact that
if it's not about feelings, then you agreed with me then, because you brought up the courtroom. You said you would interrogate them. That means when you say you interrogate them, that means you don't simply believe the eyewitness. at face value.
Keep in mind that when the person is in the courtroom and they say they saw someone, the people who are opposed to them are trying to interrogate them. It's not the person, it's not the lawyer that is with them that interrogates them. Okay, it's the opposing lawyer.
Do people lie?
And of course, people lie.
Okay, so if someone says they saw a murder, could they lie about it?
Yeah, they could lie about it. That's why you interrogate.
Okay, so again, you don't accept people's eyewitness accounts at face value, right? Because they could be lying.
They could be lying.
So we were now back to agreement.
Yeah, and what do you think we're agreeing to here?
That you do not accept eyewitness accounts at face value. Because they could be lying. You need to interrogate and investigate.
Yeah, of people you don't know, of course.
Oh, people you know wouldn't lie?
Your wife comes to you, and keep in mind, she's just telling you. And
my wife is capable of lying to me. Now,
of course she is. So are you.
Right. So what's the difference does it make if it's a good friend or your spouse? People can lie. So you do not accept eyewitness accounts at face value.
Except that if your wife comes to you for no other reason than simply you're her husband, okay? And she tells you, I saw this person.
Okay.
I don't know how to explain it, but I saw it.
Okay.
Okay. You have to believe her.
No, I don't.
Yes, you do.
You're telling me what to do?
Yeah.
Why
yes, I am on that, because you're saying you have to believe her. Why? She's your wife. If it was some acquaintance as a woman who told you I saw a dead person, you have no reason to trust them. You have no personal relationship with.
Okay. Let's see how far you're willing to take this. What if I go up to my wife and I tell her that I saw God, and He told me. My wife's a Christian, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
I saw God, and He told me that Christianity is false. That He's real, God's real, but Christianity is false.
She'd have no reason to believe you.
What? She shouldn't believe me?
Okay. Exactly. She has no reason to believe you because they reviewed the faith in.
We're talking about reasons again.
Remember what I started.
Eyewitness account, face value. She should believe me. You should believe your spouse.
No. Here is what you're forgetting. Right at the because you brought up Christianity. I already mentioned the New Testament. I already mentioned the New Testament.
You can't use eyewitness accounts against Christianity, only for it, is what I'm hearing you say.
No, I'm not saying that.
It sure sounds like it.
No, I actually told you. If you think that there's something untrue in the canon, point to it. What is false in the canon? Because telling me I don't believe Jesus walked on water, I'm sorry, those are just doubts.
I got you, Agabu.
No, you didn't. Sorry.
I got you so good.
If you were, I would have conceded that point, but no, you haven't.
Yeah, I got you.
Because
bad.
the best you can do is doubt. That's all.
I'm having so much fun.
I know you are. So am I, actually.
Oh my goodness.
So am I.
You said you should believe your spouse when they say they saw something. I saw something. It was that God Himself telling me that Christianity is false.
Yeah, because a lot of this stuff you're bringing up is just you creating and making things as you go along. You're just making stuff up.
I can't create things, but you can, all right?
No.
You brought up the murder that my wife saw.
I'm sorry, but I didn't create the Gospel of Mark. It's not my invention.
There's nothing I can say. There's nothing I can say to raise doubt on you, is there?
Of course there is. Just cast doubt on the gospel.
Okay, and I did that by saying that the Gospel of Mark doesn't claim to be written by Mark within the text and doesn't cite its sources within the text.
And that matters why?
Because, well, maybe to you it doesn't matter, but for
no. But I'm asking you, it matters why?
Because it gets to the credibility. When someone puts their name on something, it puts their reputation on the line.
Okay, And why would Mark write about himself when he's writing about Jesus, who is the point of the whole thing? How does the Gospel of Mark begin? The beginning of the Gospel of Jesus Christ, the Son of God. Sorry, man, the book isn't about Mark. It's about Jesus.
Okay. Now, but the thing is, when people want to know where did this come from, how can we rely on this being true? They ask questions.
Looking at all its historical claims in the book and seeing if they match.
Yeah,
even basic stuff like when and where and whatever these locations and places. All of it, none of it is no one.
Hang on. We got to take it off the Bible because otherwise you get too excited. But I'm gonna. The Bible's going to be in the corner of our conversation here. But
why? It is the point. You're talking about Christianity here.
How do you
take the Bible off?
How do you personally tell the difference between fiction and history? Take it off the Bible, just in general. Let's say you pick up a book and the cover's ripped off, and you start reading it. How would you tell whether you're reading a history book or a fiction book? What things would you look for?
What things I would look for historical markers like times, places, and people.
This is good. Times, places, okay, and real people. Do you think you could pick up a fictional book and have real times, real places, and real people within it?
It's very possible. Historical fiction.
Okay, so I ask again, how do you know whether it's fiction or history? If you can have real people and real places in a fictional novel.
Okay, you read the work and see what it's trying to do, and try to determine the sense in which these things are written, and trying to find out what the aims of the author are just by reading the work of the author.
Okay, but we only just have this one work from this one author. Be specific. What would be a marker for you to say, oh, this is probably history? Or or what would you have to read for you to say, oh, this is probably fiction?
Okay. Like I said, assess the work on its own merits. That's all.
But what does that mean? Be specific. Like, what would you read? What can you imagine reading and you say, oh, this is fiction?
Yeah, because that's a very broad generality. That's why I said the answer to that is a general answer. Assess the work.
Let me help you. Let me help you. Let's say we read in this book, which we don't know if it's history or fiction, and we read that I don't know, a 1,000-foot green dragon breathed fire upon a city. Would that help you at all, whether or not to decide if this is probably fiction or probably history?
All that would do is make me wonder, oh, what's the context for this thing?
Okay, so that wouldn't help you. What if I said that?
Yeah, it wouldn't tell me anything about it, whether it's true or false. Or it tells me like, oh, there's a dragon here. Did this actually happen? I don't know.
What if
this book to find out?
What if within the text of this book it said that a human flew into the sun, did a moonwalk, and flew back to Earth and told people about it? Would you say that's more likely history or more likely fiction?
Based on how you've described it, it has historical elements to it.
A man going onto the surface of the sun and flying back and telling people about it has it has history to it?
Yeah, has historical elements to it, yes.
Okay, that's just nuts. You're just crazy now.
I'm not.
You're crazy talking.
What did you just say? A man went to. What is history? Times, places, and people.
Okay, yes, you're crazy.
I'm not. Notice what I didn't say. I didn't say whether it happened or not. All I said it has historical elements to it.
Here's my question. I'll try to give you one more chance. Would you say that this book that you're reading about a man going to the surface of the sun and flying back, is it more likely to be fiction or more likely to be history?
If you're asking me to make an assessment on the fly like that, sounds like it's more likely fiction.
There we go. Now start thinking about that, and as you read the Gospels, have a good day, Agabu.
Sure.
You see how much work that is? Caleb, you saw how much work that is, right?
Assistant too.
Other stuff.
Yeah, you're good now.
Yeah, I was watching this stream live, and I guess there was a few seconds short, so it wasn't it.
It took me what, an hour to get him to admit that.
Yeah,
It's just like.
Yeah, no, I just got back from work and saw that you were still live and saw that he was talking about. I overheard some about eyewitness claims, and he was getting very confused as far as like what is historical and stuff like that. So, yeah, no, I'm probably on your side on that. But yeah, I don't know what else what else have you been talking about on the stream today?
I've been asking people why they believe Jesus Christ rose from the dead.
Oh, yeah, that's probably a horse that's.
And I've had terrible answers. I've had answers like because God wanted people to. The only way you can know God is to know that Jesus was God and that he had to rise from the dead. And I granted, there could be a God, and Christianity still falls. And
Right.
the Jews claim to know God. Moses talked to God. Anyhow, I don't want to rehash all that. And then some people believe that the Bible's or the New Testament is true because it rings true to them. It has the tone of or idea of truth just by reading it. The Muslims believe that when they read the Quran.
Yeah, it's kind of subjective, I think, right? Or the Book of Mormon, they get the burning in the bosom, right? I remember talking to Mormons, they were, it's kind of politely just pressing them on certain things, like, well, ultimately I know Joseph is a prophet because I've prayed and the Holy Spirit told me this, right? That Joseph was a prophet. The Book of Mormon is the Word of God. So, and I don't personally deny religious experiences. I don't try to say, it's the devil or something. Now, of course, one may have that exclusivistic view of theirs, but it doesn't mean that you have to say that the other ones are false. You could just say that they're getting parts of God, maybe not the whole thing. But there are Christians who will say, yeah, they're seeing God completely, and that's fine as well. So I don't discount the experience of a Hindu or a Muslim or what have you.
So did I ask you last time on Nathan's channel why you believe the resurrection happened?
I think so, because we went over the flying man stuff, and then you asked me about Paul and Mark, and then I got to Luke, and then you're like, oh, why is Luke special?
Right. For some reason, Luke put you over the edge.
Yeah, well, no, I don't know if I had explained it adequately there, but I was trying to say that the details given in Luke are more specific and have more elements than, Paul talked about the appearances, and Mark talked about the empty tomb, but we don't get a lot of details about, as far as Paul, what the nature of those experiences were like. And Mark gives us the empty tomb, but we don't have any real description of the appearances. Matthew has a little bit more, but Matthew also is pretty brief as far as the women see Jesus, the disciples see Jesus, and that's it. Whereas in Luke and John and Acts, it's for further amounts of time. So stuff like that, I think is. Sorry, go ahead.
More detail. I see. Yeah, there's maybe more detail in Luke, but I don't see how, for me personally, that would get me over the hump of belief. Mm-hmm. Like to me, it's just. In fact, Luke makes things worse in a way because it contradicts Matthew on the birth narrative. Well, I shouldn't say contradict, but there's definitely some tension there.
Yeah, I think there's only one real contradiction between them. The rest of them are differences where, Luke doesn't mention the wise men or Herod trying to kill the babies or Egypt, but that doesn't mean that he doesn't necessarily do. The only contradiction I think is, or at least apparent contradiction, is when Luke says that after 8 days they went to Jerusalem and then went back to Nazareth, whereas Matthew basically implies that they stayed there and then went to Egypt for years. So, but I think in other places in Luke, I think Luke likes to compress time. So you'll actually see that if you read the resurrection account in Luke, it sounds like it all happens in one day. Whereas in Acts, it's explicitly says this was over 40 days. And in Acts, he says he appeared in Galilee and Jerusalem. So if you read that.
Well, hang on. Preach the gospel for 30 seconds.
Why he gets his dog. Yeah.
Did you preach the gospel?
I did. I converted your whole channel. Look at that. So you're gonna be out of business now, unfortunately.
What version of Christianity are you? I forget. You're Calvinist, non-Calvinist?
No, I'm not a Calvinist.
Denominational, Protestant?
Yeah.
Protestant.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Non-denominational Protestant. Okay. Yeah. It's like I don't believe Jesus Christ rose from the dead, and I don't believe Jesus Christ rose from the dead because the evidence is not even close to being sufficient, in my opinion. But I realize that that's a boring answer, and a lot of people find that maybe as a cop-out and a very subjective thing. But I do think that you and I are the same, and that given any other circumstance outside the Bible, we'd probably arrive at the same conclusion, because you and I both live in the United States. We're products of the Enlightenment. We know how the world works, at least way better than 2,000 years ago and way better than some other countries on the planet. We wouldn't jump to conclusions of supernatural instances when a natural one could do. And I just see the New Testament as a layers upon layers of claims that can be explained naturalistically.
Yeah, well, first of all, I think as far as when just talking about the historical stuff for a second, I don't necessarily take the position that the evidence for the resurrection is so powerful that it's overwhelming that it should convince or convert people. I would say that it's sufficient to where one can be warranted and justified believing it. Now, you may not think that, but that it's also reasonable. If I really wanted to, in fact, in the book I'm working on right now, I have a whole chapter where I play devil's advocate, and I think I do a pretty good job. Like, it's really trying to, and I'm going to have skeptics look at it and try to do it like I'm representing the monster, but I could give a devil's advocate against, and I think my case is better than some other people's cases.
So do you believe based on historical reasons then, or not?
In part, not entirely.
How can you quantify that for me? Like, are you 50 historical and 50% personal experience, or?
Typically, I give a three-pronged argument, so let's say it's 33 for each, right?
So historical, personal experience. What's the third one?
I didn't say personal. I mean, personal experience might be in there, but I wouldn't put that in an argument. I was going to say philosophical priors, which I know that you're not a big fan of philosophy. Historical reasons, and then like contemporary reasons. So this goes back to the stuff I mentioned.
Miracles?
Yeah, contemporary Christian miracles, that would be part of it as well.
Okay.
But so I don't think that's divorced from, a lot of people want to say, well, look, miracles happen today, so it's reasonable to think they happened back then. I think it's more so, well, if these miracles happen in a Christian context, that makes more sense under the view that Jesus is still active in the world than it would be if he died and wasn't. So I think it's a retroactive kind of probability. How close does the historical stuff get for you? Like, I know you have a three-prong, but do you weight them the same? Like, do you actually think the historical stuff is even close to being sufficient? Sufficient or compelling? I think that when you take compelling, I think the historical stuff is sufficient enough. But I also, you and I both don't like the minimal facts approach, and I'm kind of in the middle. I kind of do what moderate facts is what I call it, because you have people on the minimal facts who do basically Paul only. That's basically what the minimal facts is. And then you have the people like the McGrews and Jonathan McLatchie, where they do a maximal case and they try to argue from the top down to say the gospel's reliable. This is the gospel's, therefore, these accounts are probably reliable. And I'm kind of in the middle. And Lindy McGrew actually has said in the past that she doesn't really like some of the stuff I did because I didn't take that approach. And I would concede, for the sake of argument, that some stuff may not be historical or in those. If I gave you a good reason to think that the Gospels, for example, are purposeful collusion, purposely authors colluded to generate a gospel narrative, would you be more likely to leave Christianity if you became convinced that there was collusion amongst the gospel authors? Amongst all of them, or you mean like Matthew and Luke redacting Mark? Let's say for now the synoptics. Okay. Would that say, you know what, I'm out? Like, that they purposely colluded? I don't think so. I think it would lower part of my confidence and maybe change some of my views, but I wouldn't say that. I would try to go by certain criteria, so I don't try to say, if some things in the Gospels are legendary, we need to throw the whole thing out. I think you can try to
No, but legend's one thing. Legend, like people can come up with legends and myths to tell a greater story, right?
Right.
But it's another thing to make the charge that the gospel authors actually work together to mislead. Right? That's a powerful charge.
Yeah, I think you probably would have to elaborate on what exactly. Like, do you have an example that you could give as far as your perception of that?
Well, I'm toying with this idea because I honestly think that if Christians became convinced that, for the same reasons why they reject Joseph Smith, because he was a charlatan, if they became convinced that Paul was a charlatan, that the gospel authors colluded, I think they're out. I don't think you can remain a Christian at that point. Am I wrong?
It would be it probably would be a limping Christianity.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be a weird. Yeah, I'm not sure. I know that there's comparisons between Paul and Joseph Smith, although I think that there's quite a few differences. Although, I mean, Joseph Smith has better attested witnesses, but those witnesses are also, the way that they describe their experiences may lead some to be questioned. Although Paul doesn't go into very specific details as far as what his experience was like. So, there's kind of caveats on both sides. Although, at least for Paul, I would say I don't really see a motivation, whereas Joseph Smith had 40 wives.
Oh, I see a huge motivation for Paul.
What do you think his motivation would have been?
Power and money. Same as usual.
Do you think as a Pharisee he already had power and money?
He had even more power and money because he brought Gentiles in.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that.
I bet you, Caleb, I am so confident in this. If we had a time machine, we went back and we saw the life of Paul, man, he was a narcissistic, power-hungry guy.
I mean, hey, if we had a time machine, this whole thing.
I know, it'd all be over, but there's Jews, like Tovia Singer, if he ever watches this, he's applauding me right now, because Tovia Singer is on record calling Paul a charlatan, a fake, and a liar.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Yeah. So, but Christians are like, oh, no, of course not. He's a Jew. He would say that. But let me read something to you. And this gets to the collusion point with the gospel authors, or at least the Matthew, Mark, and Luke. Let's say 5 of us, me, you, and some friends, are at a restaurant. We're having dinner. We notice a couple at the table next to us, and they're having an argument, and we're watching that argument intensify over the course of 10 minutes. Finally, that couple who's arguing stands up and they yell at each other, and the woman grabs a wine bottle and slams it on her husband's head. And then the paramedics and police come. They arrest the woman, and they take her off in cuffs. The paramedics work on the guy's face. A police officer comes over to me, you, and 3 others, and asks us to report and write down independently what we saw and what we heard. The police officer gets those reports from us back, and he looks and sees that there's virtually verbatim, word for word, in those instances of the narrative. Word for word. That police officer is going to be suspicious that there's collusion involved, collaboration. But there's more. That couple was arguing in Spanish. Fortunately, me, you, and all the other 3 are all fluent in Spanish, but the police officer, English only. So the police officer says, please translate your written reports into English. And anyone who's remotely familiar with another language knows that there's no one-to-one correspondence in translations. And even if you translate something differently tomorrow, you'll translate differently today versus tomorrow. But the police officers, they do get it back after we translate for them, and they still see there's a one-to-one correspondence, in many cases word for word, in our translation of what we saw. The police officer is going to be even more suspicious that we have colluded with one another. But there's still more, because the police officer didn't ask us to write down what we saw just 20 minutes ago. He asked us to write it down 30 to 40 to 50 years later to recall what happened that night between that husband and wife. And he still sees word for word collaboration. That police officer is rightly going to know that we work together on this. Now, with the Gospels, you got Jesus speaking mainly in Aramaic. It's been translated into Greek, and it's almost word for word reported at a minimum of 20 years later amongst the Gospels. Now, everything I just read to you was proposed by a Christian named Mike Licona If this is not powerful evidence of collusion within the Gospels, I don't know what is. And every Christian should doubt. Their doubts should be raised that what they're reading is actually something that happened in the past. Based on, if you can understand this story, you can understand why a person like me can be doubtful that this is an accurate portrayal of history. Okay, do you agree, disagree with any of this?
So I think that in general, your thought experiment is good. I think that I take issue with the word collusion because I don't think that, well, even given the synoptic problem, which I obviously accept, I don't think that, no one says that Mark and Luke and Mark and Matthew, they were all huddled together doing this. It was Mark wrote it, then Matthew got it.
Well, wait a minute. No. People do say that. I sorry to interject. They're called the Roman Catholic Church. They say that Paul knew Luke, Luke knew Paul, Peter knew Paul, Peter knew Mark, Mark knew Matthew, Matthew knew John. They hung out together. If you accept the traditional, now I'm quoting Dale Ellison, if you accept the traditional authorship of the Gospels, they're all together talking with one another.
Right. No, that's what I was precluding. I'm sorry, I didn't specify. I was precluding the general scholarly view that they are not traditional authorship. So given traditional authorship, you have 2 eyewitnesses out of the 4. Given not traditional authorship, you don't have eyewitnesses, but you do have at least, retroactive usage. But I don't think that the author of Matthew knew the author of Mark. Now, he definitely used him, so that's something. But I think that Lacona, and I don't know the context of that quote, but I know Lacona, and I've interviewed him and stuff like that, and his things will actually try to act as if that's a plus, because what he'll say, and this is, I don't know how I feel about this, but this is an interesting one, is that the fact that we know that the Gospels often used each other verbatim shows that they stuck closely with their sources, whereas sometimes in ancient history you'll get a direct quote, but a lot of times you'll just have where, Pericles will say this, or so-and-so will say this, and they just paraphrase, and we don't actually often have the original source. They're lost to us. And so we don't actually know how accurate the person is reading off of them. Are they representing them fairly? So some people will say that's bad that they copy off each other, not independent. Other people will say, well, we at least know that Matthew and Luke were trying to stick as closely as possible to Mark, given a few editorial.
So you don't believe in the traditional authorship?
I do believe in traditional authorship for Luke. Mark, I'm agnostic on. I don't believe it for John or Matthew.
Okay, who do you believe wrote them?
Which ones?
Mark and Matthew and John.
I don't
Mark
know
is
John.
You just don't know?
I don't know. I think Dale Ellison had an interesting theory that Matthew could have been some kind of Pharisee based on the symptoms.
Do you think they're written by eyewitnesses to Jesus?
Well, if Mark and Luke wrote it, then no, because neither of them would have been eyewitnesses. I think they had contact. I think if Luke is right in Acts that he talked with, that, as you just said, that he spoke with Peter and others, I think he had contact with them. But I don't.
But you said you don't believe Matthew and John wrote Matthew and John, right?
Yes, correct.
Do you believe eyewitnesses wrote Matthew and John?
So no, I don't think any of the Gospels were originally written by eyewitnesses. Maybe people who knew eyewitnesses, but not directly eyewitnesses.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, so in your case, I agree with you that it's less likely there's collusion rather than it's just them copying from each other.
Yeah.
Plagiarism. But if you take the traditional authorship, which I think a lot of evangelicals do, how can you not see collusion here?
Yeah, no, I don't think you're wrong. But again, even if it was collusion, I wouldn't see it as being, dishonest collusion. I think it would be just I'm checking your notes, you're checking mine. But I also don't think that they were written by those people. So that's not, most scholars wouldn't say that. So I understand what you're saying, but I don't. What's really funny is that I think this goes both ways. You will see apologists who will say, look at all these differences in, I don't know, the empty tomb resurrection accounts, how all these differences, that means that they couldn't have been copying each other because they disagree on so many things. And I think that just goes both ways, because some people say, oh, they're so similar, they were copying. Other people say, oh, they were so different, they weren't copying. I don't think it's falsifiable either way, and I don't think that it gets us on either side, so I don't think it's helpful.
But if you believe that non-eyewitnesses wrote the Gospels, and if you believe that there's some form of plagiarism going on, then it rests on the veracity of Mark.
For certain things, yeah. I mean, Matthew and Luke obviously share tradition that's not in Mark, right? You have the Q tradition.
Yeah, but majority of it is from Mark.
Sure, the majority of it is, yeah. But that's what I'm saying. I think, there's a lot of debate within the community, as far as Q or the FAR hypothesis. But generally, you do have Matthew and Luke used Mark. Matthew and Luke may have shared a source. Matthew then had his own.
I know, but the point remains that if Mark is not to be trusted, then it follows that Matthew and Luke should not be trusted. Agree?
Are you saying Mark isn't trusted because he colluded?
No, I'm saying if it's true that Mark is not reliable, then it follows, since the majority of Matthew and Luke come from Mark, or at least close to half, then we can now say that Matthew and Luke are not reliable.
The majority of them wouldn't be reliable. The parts that are Markan at least wouldn't be. Yeah.
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 So now I'm back to what we talked about earlier. Why does Luke get you over the edge of belief? Because it all actually boils down to Mark.
Well, not with the resurrection, because Matthew and Luke's and John's all have different. They obviously have Mark's account, but their details are completely different than Mark's version.
Right, I understand.
Yeah.
But if Mark doesn't even mention a resurrection, and Luke and Matthew have different versions of resurrections, and John does too, why do you think any of this is reporting history?
Yeah, no, I think that this is where the job of the historian comes in, that we have criteria to assess it, and you could do something like the criterion of dissimilarity. I typically ask to say, if people were going to if we're going to grant Sigarba, they were going to try to use apologetic conventions, what would this look like, and what elements of it don't look like apologetic conventions? So if you look at something like the guard of the tomb of Matthew, well, that makes sense as an apologetic convention, right? You have the guards there to refute the idea that the body was stolen. Some people will even say that.
But that's apologetic, right?
It is apologetic, yeah.
Yeah. It's basically, in my opinion, a way of promoting or trying to head people off at the past who don't believe this.
Right, yeah.
You would expect this to be in the text, even if Jesus didn't rise from the dead.
Yeah, that's true. If they were getting rebuttals and stuff like that, which is, by the way, why Mark's account is so interesting, because Mark's account is very plain, and the other ones might be building off of it, but Mark's doesn't have any kind of apologetic values. It doesn't have any references to scripture, at least in chapter 16. It doesn't have any Christological titles. So I think that if there is going to be redaction, you could say the later ones are trying to make Mark more ironclad because he's out in the open. That still implies that, why? Then you ask, why didn't Mark just make it more ironclad in the first place? So I do think that's the historical core there. It's kind of like with, I think you talked to Laura Robinson about this, but like with the baptism of Jesus to John the Baptist, how you have this in Mark, and then the other ones kind of try to go away from that and make it more where John is like, oh no, Jesus, you should be baptizing me. That shows they maybe have been trying to get away from that and change it. But if they were uncomfortable with it, why did they even have it in the first place? Why not make it the strong version to begin with? And I think that shows that Mark's account probably is the best one, and then the other ones maybe trying to back off of it. But I still think that it still follows from it that Mark's is probably fairly accurate. So at least on those details. Now with the resurrection stuff, we don't have any details in Mark that are really changed, in or at least that are mentioned. He mentions the appearance to Peter. He doesn't go into detail. So as far as how much of the Gospel's resurrection tradition is redaction versus history, I'm actually working, well, not at the moment because I'm doing a book, but I was working on an article about Matthew 28 where I think that Matthew used a pretty early tradition for a lot of it. And I give like 7 arguments. I think it's an early non-Matthean tradition. That might be pre-Pauline, but
a lot of this is meaningless to me because it comes down to the Gospel of Mark mentions Jesus walking on water, right?
Yep.
Like, do you believe that's history?
I would, yeah.
But I don't think, from what we've been talking about the last 15, 20 minutes, I think you would say that that's not sufficient to believe that he did.
Right, not on that basis. I mean, now granted, I take that from the 3-pronged arguments I gave earlier. If you have the belief Jesus is God and do all that retroactively, you could say that. But if it was just a historical account without the other details and stuff like that, it was just someone walking on water, I don't think that alone would be necessarily good.
Okay, so those 2 prongs aside, just based on the historical prong, you wouldn't believe Jesus walked on water?
Not with the sources we have. No, probably not. Now, but by the way, I don't know if that would mean that I would say that. I wouldn't say that he walked on water. Now, that doesn't mean that I think that would necessarily have to be like a late legend. You could have people who really thought he walked on water. You know, was this from a distance on the beach? Was it dark? I don't know. So we could still say they were mistaken, but you could still say he didn't walk on water.
So what about the other two prongs makes the report that Jesus walked on water more likely to you?
Well, the first prong was about, you know, the argument that God would become incarnate and atone, and that person would be Jesus. So that alone raises your priors for that.
Wait, no, but you get all that from the text.
Well, no, not for the incarnation atonement. I mean, granted, the person of Jesus you do get from the text. That's true.
No, the atonement stuff you do as well.
Well, you know, you do, but like people like Richard Swinburne will make a philosophical argument for that.
For what? The atonement theory?
For the idea that God would become incarnate and atone for human sins, yes.
You can get that without using the Bible.
You can make an argument for it without using the Bible, yeah. Based
Is
on
that what you do?
Conception of God. I think that his argument is interesting and persuasive. I actually have a
wow.
I don't have it with me, but I had a book on theodicy where I talk about the problem of evil, and I have a chapter in there that talks about how you could propose that a good God would become incarnate and atone. I think you could make like, for example, if God is omnipotent, it's hard to imagine how God could really give love in the same way that we do, because humans, when we express love, usually it's in terms of sacrifice. It's either money or time or something, because we're finite creatures. You have to spend something to do that. And it's hard to imagine how an omnipotent God could do that in a way that...
Where did you get this idea of omnipotent God from?
Oh, well, that would be from philosophy as well, right? I mean, there's plenty of religions that believe in omnipotent God without the Bible.
Okay, so because of philosophy, you believe in an omnipotent God, and because of philosophy, you believe this God would want to atone. Because of philosophy, you believe in sin. Because of philosophy, that atonement has to be a blood sacrifice. Because of, are you serious? All this is coming from philosophy?
Yeah. Well, again, I'm giving a very parroted version of this, so I would have to point you to the original sources to do this for Resurrection of God Incarnate by Richard Swinburne, 2003, Oxford University Press, if you want to do an in-depth dive of it. But I'm just giving you the
okay, let's work with that. Let's assume you can get to an omnipotent God who has this concept of sin, and he actually cares about people, and he wants to atone for it. How do you get to that Jesus is that guy?
Yeah, that's a good question, and that's kind of the second point, right? So I think one point is that if God does have this message, right, and that God does this around, I think when you look retroactively at Christianity to say that it's the most impactful religion in the world. Now, let me clarify. I don't think that you have to have divine intervention to explain the success of Christianity. I'm not saying that. You could explain that through Constantine and naturalistically, but it's saying that if we were going to ask which person in history would God pick to do this, who's had the biggest impact, it would make sense that people who follow this man, you know, Jesus, considering that that's spread throughout the whole world, this would be the best avenue to get your gospel.
But that's in retrospect, right?
Yeah. Sure, it's in retrospect, but of course, I mean, you have to do history retrospect.
So you're saying God is more likely to choose the person Jesus as the man God because God knew that Jesus would become famous.
Well, yeah. So if we were doing this 2,000 years ago, I don't think we could, you know, predict that Christianity would get as big as it was. But I'm saying if you're looking at people in history right now in 2022 and saying who would best fit this idea to get this message out, so people can know this about God, Christianity has the widest scope of appeal in the world. And so it would make more sense than some random guy, let's say in Thailand, who was resurrected, who nobody knows about. You know, if God did this and no one knew about it, it would be kind of weird to see how that would be impactful.
Who's the second, like if Jesus has had the widest influence scope in the world, who would be the second most influential?
Maybe Muhammad. I mean, in terms of
do you think it? So are you saying it's actually also more likely that God would raise Muhammad from the dead as well, because he's had such a big impact?
Well, you could say Muhammad is a problem. I mean, Muhammad never claimed to be God incarnate or raised from the dead in the first. I also don't think that.
But I'm talking about raising from the dead.
Right. You're just saying as far as picking an individual.
Yeah, because he's had second biggest influence.
That's true. It would depend on, but you know, if Muhammad didn't claim to be God incarnate and to do this kind of path to salvation that you're getting from philosophy, that would, I mean, it wouldn't rule him out, but it would maybe lower the priors. Whereas if this is consistent with Jesus and stuff like that.
So if Muhammad did claim to be God, and then you say Muhammad.
If Muhammad claimed to be God, and yeah, that would raise the priors for sure.
Okay, so let me get this straight. If you claim to be God, and if 2,000 years later you've had a huge influence, then that means that it raises the probability that an omnipotent God would want to raise them from the dead?
Given the background information, it would be more probable.
This is just crazy to me. This is nuts.
Yeah, that's fine. And of course, it's hard. Of course, having to grant that as well. And I know that we didn't explain why would God become incarnate and why would God did host it. That's a whole other argument. But I think it would make more sense for that to be the case than it would be for some random schmo who had no influence. Just given that this is God wants to have a relationship with everybody. Now, if you're a Calvinist, this might undermine it, which I'm not a Calvinist, so I will admit that precludes that kind of.
So, okay, this is interesting because if, let's say, the resurrection of Jesus's life and ministry would have happened in the 1800s instead of 2,000 years ago, I'm hearing you say you would probably not believe it because you need this influence in this raising a probability that God would. This influence that Jesus would have, you would have to wait for it to develop to say, okay, yeah, this is probably God incarnate.
That's fair enough, yeah, at that point, because if you did, I think 100, 200 years ago after Christianity wasn't that big. But that's, so I would say, but I'm also open to being proven wrong with that. So of course I can't live it, but if we lived 1,000 years later and there was an even more influential religion and that religion had these priors of someone claiming to be God, stuff like that, that would be a good candidate. It wouldn't prove it thereby, but it would at least be a good candidate. We'd have to look at the other two prongs. So,
and if let's say 100 years from now, when Islam surpasses Christianity in influence, are you going to say that it's more likely now that this God favors Muhammad over Jesus?
Well, again, Muhammad didn't necessarily claim to be God and all that, so it would lower the priors a little bit, but that would still mean Christianity is the second most influential. I don't think that we'd have to say it has to be the most influential, that it would just have to be extremely influential. Now, of course, Christianity is most influential right now. Now, Islam may overtake that in the next 50 years or so.
But let's say Christianity died next year for some.
If Christianity died next year, yeah, I think that would hurt the priors a lot. Yeah.
Huh.
Just as the Greek gods, virtually no one believes in them anymore and stuff like that. It would just be a really weird salvific message to have, I think.
So it's almost like a domino effect. If let's say the percentage of Christians in the United States keeps dropping, and for people like you would say, oh, that means it's less likely Christianity is true because of the priors, and it just cascades upon itself, and before you know it, like, is truth based on the number of people who believe it?
No, not based off of that itself, but it's just talking about the best avenues to get out this message of salvation, right? So I wouldn't say that the majority of people believe it, therefore it's true, but that if God was going to use a person to get out.
But you're saying more likely to be true, though.
It makes it more likely, but I will concede that at one point in our history, everyone virtually believed that the Earth was the center of the universe, and that wasn't true. So that doesn't, I wasn't trying to say that just because it's popular, it's true. I was saying that God wants to get this message out. Doing it through a popular means would get it out to the most people. Therefore, it makes sense that God would do it through the most popular means, or at least a very popular means. I don't think it has to be the most popular means, but so I think that's just significant. So I think as long as Christianity is still extremely relevant, and even if it's dropping in the United States, that's true, but it's also increasing in places like Africa and Asia by very large numbers. So I think I'm more concerned with the global numbers than the Western numbers, because that was winning the war, but.
Okay, the first prong was history. We talked about the second prong was that it's more probable that an omnipotent God would want this because of philosophy. Mm-hmm. What's the third prong, quickly?
Third prong was like the modern miracles in the Christian context and stuff like that. Yeah.
Okay, and so you believe that those have happened, and that makes Christianity more likely to be true?
I think it makes more sense under the hypothesis that Jesus was God incarnate and raised from the dead than it does that he wasn't. Yeah.
Just any miracle, any miracle, or just miracles that's done in Jesus' name? Like demons can do miracles according to the scriptures.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, and that's something that I have a chapter on as well of saying that I think Christianity is not the only religion to claim miracles by a long shot, but it is the only religion where you can say the majority, especially in the third world, the majority of its converts convert because they have seen miracles, and that's even true when you look at the church fathers in the early days. And so although you have religion miracles in religions, typically these happen by people who already believe them within the religion, whereas Christianity's miracles are meant to convert people, to change people's minds, like Muslims or Hindus. So
I'm okay asking for God to light up my water soaked napkin then.
Well, you and I have discussed it. I don't think we can ask God for a specific, I demand this particular kind of thing.
No. Where did you get the word demand from? I'm asking politely and humbly. for God to light out my water soap napkin. If he doesn't want to, he doesn't have to.
Yeah, I mean, it's fair.
You said it was for conversion. Miracles are for conversion.
It was, yeah. If it was genuinely going to convert them to miracle, but of course, every miracle also has, as we know, a potential domino effect as well. Like you could look at, well, I don't think that this wasn't a Christian miracle, but if you look at Rasputin in the early 1900s healing, what's his name, Alexei, who had hemophilia, that basically set off this chain for the Russian Revolution, the Soviet Union to form. So I don't think I don't think we can expect God to perform a miracle in these particular. We can know God is going to perform a miracle here at this time, to this person, and there'd be lots of issues with that. But I do think in general God does it to convert people. Now, whether he'll do that for you, we'll have to see. Maybe he will do something.
Do you think God does it in some countries more than other countries?
I think it would depend on how many Christians are in those countries, and it would also depend on how much medical availability they have. So it's true that a lot of these happen in third world countries, but it's also true that most sick people in the world are in third world countries as well. So it doesn't surprise me that most healings of sick people happen in countries where there's more sick people. But there are ones in the West as well. The West ones have better documentation. So in my book, I focus more on those because they're just easier to verify. A lot of the ones in each world countries you can't necessarily verify. And so I'm open to that. But ones where you have medical documentation stuff is preferable. But yeah, so I think that there's just a plethora of things to go by that. Yeah. I know you're not persuading. That's fine. I'm not here to
not at all.
Take it oh no, I know. I think it's just nice. I hope it's at least an interesting perspective to think.
I think it's not a coincidence that we see miracle claims in a lot of third world countries where there's desperation.
I mean, certainly that's part of it, right? But that's why I think you have to look at each one on a case-by-case basis. And so I don't typically throw out any offhand.
How many have you looked at on a case-by-case basis? Because I don't have the time to do it.
Well, I'll let you know when my book comes out. I probably close to 100. I don't know.
Because when I hear guys like Craig Keener talk about these things he's put in his book, I mean, it's like, it's horrible. I mean, so-and-so said that such and such happened, and it's like, no verification. What's the doctor's name? When was this? Where is this? Can we interview these people? And one was a resurrection. Like, how do we know they were dead?
Mm-hmm.
Like, one was a snake bite.
Right. Yeah. And you can't always verify they were dead.
Yeah.
No, that's fair. Yeah. And I generally don't have a lot. I mean, I have parts where it's anecdotal, but I typically have like a thing will say medical verification and this and go over the speed. So I tried, like, it'll be something like, there was a woman who was certified deaf. They had a disability card, and we can do this. And we have the medical records from 2004 to show their healing was so-and-so and this. And they were prayed for at this Pentecostal revival, and they went to the doctor 1 week later, and their hearing was completely normal, and they got off disability. And we did this test again 5 years later, and their hearing was still completely normal, and this is not something that remits naturally. Like something like that, I think that would be more interesting. But I don't want to go into details and bore you, because I know you have other people to come on. So
well, no, you're my last guy.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm glad you could end it on hopefully a decent note, and not the people you had. I hope it was less bad than the people you had earlier. But
my kids just got home from school, and they turned on the heat, and I'm baking right now because it's like I'm in the office and the door's closed.
Oh, really?
I got to get out of here. But anyhow, take care. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks. You too. Take care.
What a roller coaster of a live stream. Turn the volume down. Thanks, Myron. We had like almost every type of Christian in here. Whatever your wife says, you have to believe it. That's what I learned from, what's his name? Agabu? I believe in Jesus. He's my yoga teacher. Great guy. Thanks, Amy. That made me laugh. Always ask for the single best miracle example. Well, I think we did mention it in Craig Keener's book, or the one that he at least mentions when he does his tour on the circuit, is that's resurrection account. But it was a snake bite, and there was no verification that the person was dead to begin with. Your head is hurting, LB. I'm stuck in this sauna talking to crazy people. The thing is, the people who I talk to, they're still listening probably, and I can call them crazy, and they know I'm saying it in love. And I like GB the best, Jerome. Yeah, he was cool. I told him to say praise Jesus loud in the restaurant, and he did. Poker in 2 hours, 10 minutes. Anybody who wants to play poker? Anybody who I interviewed is welcome. Email me, dll1671@yahoo.com. Apparently, Agabu was swindled after appearing on the PineCreek show. Yeah, Agabu is what Nigerian princes are made of. No, I still drink sparkling ice now and then. Poof. How long did we go? We went 3 hours and 40 minutes. I am still a novice compared to Digital Gnosis. Hey guys, have a great evening. I will play in poker tonight. Take care.